Have you ever felt like someone was pulling your strings without you realizing it? Narcissists are experts at subtle manipulation, often hiding in plain sight. Tonight, we'll explore 3 hours of their most cunning tricks you've probably never noticed. And by understanding them, you'll find the clarity and calm you need to drift peacefully to sleep. The Empathy Vortex. You meet someone new, and it feels like they've known you forever. They laugh at the exact moment you do, finish your sentences, and when you open up about a struggle, their face mirrors your pain so perfectly that you drop your guard. In a world where most people barely listen, it feels intoxicating to be so deeply understood. Your stories become their stories, your worries reflected in their soft, understanding eyes. But after a while, something odd creeps in. You find yourself unsure which feelings are truly yours, and which ones you picked up from the person you trust most. This is what psychologists call the empathy vortex, a hidden trap where someone mirrors your emotions so intensely, the boundary between your feelings and theirs begins to dissolve. At first, this connection feels magical. You're grateful for the closeness, for the sense of finally being seen. But soon you realize your emotions seem to multiply and swirl, no longer entirely your own. Your happiness feels brighter, but your sadness, your anxiety, your anger, all of it seems to echo and grow, bounced back and forth between you like light in a hall of mirrors. Imagine you've had a rough day and mention it in passing. They sigh in perfect sympathy, sharing a story of their own struggle, eerily similar to yours. You feel relief, but a subtle confusion sets in. Did you share first, or did they? Did you shape your words to match their reaction, or did they shape their reaction to match you? Over time, you notice that your opinions, your moods, even your interests begin to sync up. You start eating what they crave, watching shows you weren't interested in before. Their laughter becomes your soundtrack, and your sadness seems to drag them down. Or is it the other way around? This can happen with anyone, a friend, a partner, even a coworker who always seems on your wavelength. Sometimes it's harmless, a quirk of human connection. But sometimes, especially in manipulative relationships, it's a tool for control. When someone mirrors you so perfectly, you start to trust them blindly. The problem is, this trust isn't always earned. Instead, it's manufactured, engineered by someone who's learned to reflect your emotions like a mirror reflects light. Flawless, but cold. There are times when the empathy vortex is simply two people who are naturally sensitive, each picking up on the other's moods and amplifying them without meaning to. But in toxic dynamics, the empathy vortex can be a trap. Narcissists and manipulators use it as a form of emotional camouflage, drawing you in by echoing your feelings so closely you forget to check if they ever reveal any of their own. They ask you about your childhood, your fears, your dreams, and they always seem to have a matching story, a matching pain, a matching joy. The more you share, the deeper you sink, and the harder it becomes to know what's truly yours. You might find yourself comforting them for pain that started with you. You feel responsible for their moods. Your sadness pulls them under, but instead of lifting you up, they drown with you, or worse, pull you down further. In friendships, it can look like endless validation. Every rant met with agreement, every complaint amplified. In relationships, it can mean giving up your identity, bending until you break, just to keep the peace. The scariest part is how natural it feels, until you realize you've lost track of who you were before you met them. So, how do you escape? You start by pausing, by checking in with yourself. When you notice your moods shifting with someone else's, ask, is this really how I feel, or am I absorbing their energy? What do I want outside of this moment? It's okay to connect deeply, but real empathy respects boundaries. Healthy relationships let you feel seen without losing your sense of self. The empathy vortex can be a beautiful illusion, but it's still an illusion, a hall of mirrors that can leave you dizzy, disoriented, and desperately searching for the exit. Reclaim your feelings, reclaim your voice. Because in the end, only by standing apart can two people truly meet. Mask of shared wounds. You meet someone new, and within a single conversation, they seem to understand the pain in your past better than your oldest friend ever could. You mention a loss, a wound, a scar that changed the direction of your life, and suddenly, they reveal they've suffered the exact same thing. Their story mirrors yours, detail for detail, echoing your secret hurts, your hidden fears, and the dark memories you rarely speak aloud. It feels like fate. It feels like destiny. It feels, for the first time, like you're not alone in the world. You drop your guard, you let them in. But there's a cold, hidden truth behind this intoxicating connection. Not every wound they recount is real. Some people wear the mask of shared wounds, a mask constructed from carefully crafted stories, designed not to heal, but to hook. When a person invents traumas or exaggerates pain to match your own, their motive isn't connection, it's control. They're not sharing in your suffering. They're using your suffering as a shortcut into your trust, your loyalty, even your love. Why does this tactic work so powerfully? Humans are wired for empathy. When we meet someone who survives similar storms, it triggers a kind of psychological shortcut. We relax, we identify, we mirror. This is called trauma bonding, the forging of emotional ties through pain and survival. Our defenses drop because we assume nobody would fake something so sacred, so private, so life-defining. But that assumption is the very crack the manipulator exploits. Think back. Have you ever met someone who seemed to echo every heartbreak you've ever had? The more you shared, the more they revealed. Every secret pain you confessed, they matched with one of their own, sometimes eerily, sometimes conveniently, sometimes so perfectly it felt rehearsed. At first, you were amazed at the coincidence. But over time, small details didn't add up. Stories changed, timelines shifted, wounds seemed to appear and vanish as needed. Still, your mind pushed these doubts away because the need to be understood is so much stronger than the urge to question. This is the emotional con artist's playground. By mirroring your pain, they build an illusion of shared experience. You feel seen, understood, and special. You start to feel responsible for them too. After all, who else could understand what it's like to carry this weight? They become your confidant, your mirror, your support. But really, you've been caught in a web spun from borrowed or invented pain. Let's go deeper. Imagine someone invents a story of childhood neglect after hearing your own struggles. They don't just repeat your words, they amplify them, weaving in vivid scenes, emotional details, and perfectly timed revelations. If you share a story of a lost parent, they tell you about their own parent's tragic death, often with just enough difference to keep you guessing, but enough similarity to keep you hooked. If you've suffered abuse, they have suffered too, but somehow, their abuser is always worse, the scars deeper, the betrayals even sharper. You want to comfort them. You want to believe them, because believing them feels like believing in your own story, and that validation is addictive. Why would someone do this? The motives are rarely innocent. Some crave attention or sympathy. Others want to gain your trust so they can manipulate or exploit you. For some, it's a way to justify bad behavior. I act this way because I'm wounded, just like you. Sometimes it's all three, wrapped in a mask so convincing you'll doubt your own instincts before you ever doubt their sincerity. The psychological cost is devastating. When you finally discover the deception, it feels like a second betrayal. Not only were your deepest pains used against you, but your empathy, your superpower, became your weakness. You might start to question whether anyone who claims to understand you ever really can. You build higher walls, you trust less, you withdraw. The real tragedy is that the wounds were real, but the connection was fake. This tactic is especially common in toxic relationships. Narcissists, for example, are notorious for weaponizing false intimacy. They study your vulnerabilities and use them as entry points. They collect stories, sometimes even adopting other people's traumas as their own, and deploy them whenever they need to regain your loyalty or escape accountability. In the early days of a relationship, they will often create a rapid, intense bond, known as love bombing, where they seem to match every value, every dream, every wound. But over time, the mask slips. Their stories contradict, their empathy vanishes when you need it most, and the shared wounds are used as leverage. After all I've suffered, how could you hurt me? Or, you and I, we're not like everyone else. We're damaged. We need each other. Listen for the subtle clues. Real trauma isn't usually performed. It leaks out in unexpected ways, in silences and body language, in details that don't change. People who have truly suffered often minimize or avoid their own pain, not paraded in perfect synchrony with yours. When a person seems too eager to match every experience, when their suffering always escalates to outdo yours, when inconsistencies pile up but are dismissed with new, dramatic revelations, pause. Ask yourself, is this shared pain or a mask of manipulation? The mask of shared wounds doesn't just hurt individuals, it damages communities. It teaches people to doubt empathy, to question every confession, to believe that real connection is always just a trick. Survivors of this manipulation become wary of support groups, therapy, even friendships. The world becomes colder, more isolated, more suspicious. And that, perhaps, is the saddest legacy of all. A world where pain doesn't unite us, but divides us even further. But there is a way back. When you learn to recognize the pattern, you reclaim your power. Trust your gut. Ask gentle but real questions. Notice when someone's pain always follows yours, never leads. Remember that true intimacy takes time, not trauma. Real connection grows slowly, through shared moments both joyful and painful, not through instant, perfect mirroring. If someone is using your wounds as currency, you have the right to protect yourself, even if it means stepping away from the illusion of understanding. Ultimately, the most powerful relationships are not built on matching scars, but on mutual respect, honesty, and care that isn't conditional on suffering. You deserve to be seen for your real story, not just for your wounds. And when you meet someone who honors that, who can listen, support, and share their truth at their own pace, not as a performance, you'll recognize the difference. Because real empathy is quiet. It's not a mask. It's a light. If you've ever fallen for the mask of shared wounds, forgive yourself. Your openness was not a flaw, but a testament to your courage. It's only those who risk vulnerability that can ever hope to build something real. The answer isn't to close your heart, but to protect it wisely, and to remember, your pain is not a trapdoor for someone else to slip inside. It is the ground on which you will one day stand tall. The Puzzle Withheld. Have you ever met someone who always seems like a mystery, like there's something just out of reach, a sadness, a scar, a longing? It feels like a challenge. It pulls at you. They drop hints about their past. They let you glimpse a bruise, an unfinished story, a confession cut short. It's never enough to understand them, but always enough to keep you circling, digging, trying to piece together what hurts, what's broken, what needs rescuing. This is the puzzle withheld, and it's one of the most quietly powerful manipulations in human connection. You think you're helping. You think you're unraveling a beautiful, tragic secret. But the truth is, the puzzle is designed to never be solved. The more you try, the more entangled you become, until your own peace, your own stability, is chained to the hope that someday, maybe, you'll finally see the whole picture. It usually starts innocently enough. Maybe you notice the way they look away when a certain subject comes up, or the way they laugh off a personal question with a quick joke. Sometimes it's a carefully crafted silence. Sometimes it's the tiniest detail that doesn't add up. It makes you curious, then it makes you concerned, and finally it makes you obsessed. Suddenly, you're listening for every clue in their stories, waiting for accidental slips, for late-night honesty. They tell you, there are things you don't know about me, or I'm not ready to talk about my past. Sometimes you get fragments. I've been hurt in ways you can't imagine, or I'm not sure anyone could ever understand. Your imagination does the rest, filling in the blanks with every fear and every tenderness you possess. This dynamic is everywhere. In friendships, in romance, even in families. You see it in the partner who always stays just a little bit emotionally distant, no matter how much love you give them. You see it in the friend who reveals their pain in riddles, never asking for help, but always hinting they need it. You see it in the family member who guards their history with fierce privacy. And every rare moment of openness feels like a rare jewel, something you want to cherish, to prove you're worthy of receiving. What's so cruel and seductive about this phenomenon is that it hijacks something very human in us. The drive to heal, to help, to earn trust, to be the one who finally figures it out. The puzzle withheld turns your empathy into a hook. Your loyalty becomes a kind of leash. The less you know, the more you ache to know. And the more you ache, the deeper you dig, and the more tightly you bind yourself to someone who never truly intends to let you in. Imagine you're in a relationship where every milestone of intimacy seems just out of reach. You have conversations that brush up against honesty, but swerve away at the last second. Maybe there's a trauma they never fully name, a betrayal they only hint at. They might cry in the dark, but when you reach out, they push you away with, I can't talk about it. Not yet. You keep showing up. You keep thinking that if you are just patient, just loving enough, someday they'll let you through the door. This keeps you locked in place because every small reveal feels like progress. You never realize the finish line will always move just a step ahead of you. Or maybe it's a friend who is always fine, but sometimes, late at night, sends you cryptic texts. I don't think anyone will ever really get me. You rush to reassure them, to offer comfort, to try to draw out the truth. But the next day, they're walled off again, brushing aside your concern, leaving you more confused, more invested. You start to feel like you're the only one who can save them, the only one who truly cares. You don't see that you're being trained to become addicted to a puzzle with no answer. This dynamic doesn't just create anxiety, it creates dependence. The more someone withholds, the more you believe that gaining their trust would be proof of your worth. It's a powerful emotional economy where every scrap of vulnerability they give you feels precious, and every moment of withdrawal feels like a loss. Over time, you stop asking if you even like this person, if they're good for you, if you feel loved. The entire relationship becomes about solving them, making the unspoken spoken, earning the confession, unlocking the door. Why do some people become puzzle withholders? Sometimes it's defense. Trauma survivors, people with abandonment wounds, those who grew up in chaotic homes, they learn to control intimacy by rationing their truths. Vulnerability is power. If they reveal too much, they risk being hurt or rejected again. If they reveal too little, they never have to risk being known. But sometimes, it's not just fear. It's a way to control others. By always staying just out of reach, they make sure you're always reaching, always proving, always performing the emotional labor of closeness while they stay safe, protected, and in charge. Think about how this shows up in the stories we love. The tragic hero with a past no one knows. The mysterious stranger who only reveals their pain in cryptic lines. The character who, no matter how much others give, can never be fully reached. These stories are compelling for a reason. They play on a universal human longing, the hope that love, patience, or effort can unlock someone's pain and heal them. But in real life, when someone keeps the puzzle just out of reach, it's not just a tragedy, it's a trap. The saddest part is, people who get stuck in these dynamics often start to neglect themselves. They ignore their own needs, their own boundaries, and even their own happiness. They tolerate emotional distance, inconsistency, or even mistreatment because they've bought into the idea that earning the withheld truth is a kind of love story. They become so used to decoding someone else's silence that they lose touch with their own voice. So, what does it look like to break free? It means noticing when curiosity turns into obsession. It means recognizing when your efforts are being met with real trust and when they're just being used to keep you hooked. It means asking yourself, am I being invited into someone's world, or am I being kept just close enough to keep chasing them? Then true intimacy doesn't make you chase. It doesn't keep moving the goalposts. It doesn't leave you hungry for scraps of confession. Sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is stop solving someone else's puzzle. Sometimes, real love is saying, I can't keep knocking on a door you're never going to open. Sometimes, it's recognizing that you deserve relationships where trust flows both ways, where vulnerability is a gift, not a game, not a test, not a lure. If you've ever been caught in the puzzle withheld, know this. It was never your fault that you wanted to help, to understand, to heal. That longing is what makes you human, but your worth was never meant to be measured by how well you solve someone else's maze. In the end, the most important mystery is learning why you stayed, what in you needed the puzzle, and how to finally reclaim your own story. The one where you are not just a detective in someone else's life, but the main character in your own. Reality rehearsal. You know that feeling, the moment an argument starts, and it's as if the other person has already written the script. Every word you offer, every defense you try, seems to have already been anticipated. You find yourself cornered, not just by their logic, but by the uncanny sense that they've rehearsed this moment 100 times before you even stepped into it. This isn't intuition, this is reality rehearsal. A phenomenon where someone prepares for confrontation so meticulously, so obsessively, that when the real moment comes, you're trapped in a play you never agreed to act in. This isn't just a social quirk. It's psychological chess, and you're not just losing. You never had a chance. Let's go deeper. Why do people rehearse arguments in their minds? Part of it is simple anxiety. Nobody likes to be caught off guard, especially when something is at stake. But reality rehearsal goes beyond healthy preparation. It becomes an art of mental warfare where the goal is control, not communication. Imagine a person replaying every past disagreement late at night, dissecting not only what you said, but how you said it. The way your voice trembled, the words you paused on. They reconstruct the conversation with forensic precision. But it doesn't stop there. In their minds, they create dozens of branching timelines. If I say this, maybe she'll react that way. But if she brings up that old mistake, I'll counter with this. And if she tries to guilt-trip me, here's my emotional firewall ready to go. Each scenario becomes more elaborate, until the argument is less a spontaneous event and more a meticulously engineered simulation. So, when you finally clash in real life, you might sense something chilling. Your opponent is never surprised. Your pain, your defenses, your truths, they land exactly where they're supposed to, because the other person has already lived this scene again and again, erasing any chance of genuine surprise or connection. Your words aren't new to them. You're repeating lines they wrote for you. Consider the dynamic in a controlling relationship, parent, partner, or even boss. The person with the power advantage uses reality rehearsal as a shield and a sword. Picture a parent anticipating every excuse their teenager might give for coming home late, crafting airtight counter-arguments before the kid even walks through the door. The confrontation isn't a negotiation. It's an ambush. The teenager, outmatched, realizes their honesty is useless. It's a helplessness that breeds silence and eventually surrender. Or think of the workplace. Maybe you have a manager who always seems to win every debate, always has data at hand to shut you down, and never, ever seems genuinely surprised by your objections. That's not brilliance. It's rehearsed dominance. Every time you speak, you feel smaller because the ground beneath your feet is already mapped out. Even your resistance is expected. The effects are subtle, corrosive. At first, you might chalk it up to bad luck. Maybe you're just not good at arguing. Maybe you're overthinking. But over time, it becomes existential. You begin to question your own autonomy. If every move you make is already accounted for, is there any point in defending yourself at all? Reality itself begins to feel staged. You hesitate before speaking, unsure whether you're contributing or simply walking into a trap. The argument is already lost, not because you're wrong, but because the other person is rehearsing victory long before the fight begins. Let's make this real with an example. Imagine you're in a relationship with someone who is chronically suspicious. Every week there's a new accusation, a fresh inquisition. But what really hurts is not the lack of trust. It's how they always have a prepared counter for every explanation you offer. You say, "I was working late." They already have your boss's social media post loaded up. But your boss tagged everyone at a bar at 8 p.m. You say, "I just needed some air." They remind you, "Funny, you said the same thing last time." And you never explain where you went. Every plea, every apology, every raw truth becomes fuel for a pre-built argument. Over time, you start doubting your own memory. You start editing your actions in real time, not to avoid conflict, but because you know resistance is useless. Your life becomes a rehearsal too, but one you never wanted. Why does reality rehearsal happen? At its core, it's about fear. Fear of losing control. Fear of being vulnerable. Fear of being exposed. For some, it's a trauma response, a learned behavior from years of being caught off guard. For others, it's a calculated power play. They know that surprise is the weapon of the powerless, so they remove it from the equation entirely. The argument becomes a performance, with only one possible ending. But there's a deeper tragedy. The more someone rehearses reality, the less they actually live in it. Every relationship becomes a game of defense and attack. Genuine connection is sacrificed on the altar of certainty. The rehearsed person becomes a ghost haunting their own life, always 2 steps ahead but never really present. And the people around them, they become marionettes, stripped of spontaneity and agency. Is there a way out? The first step is recognizing when you're stuck in someone else's script. When you notice every argument ends the same way, when your feelings are anticipated and invalidated before you can even voice them, stop and see the pattern. This isn't a failure of communication, it's a trap. Second, remember that authenticity is unpredictable. You break the cycle not by fighting harder, but by refusing to perform. Sometimes, the only way to win is not to play. Speak your truth, but don't argue for sport. Withdraw your energy from rehearsed battles. You're not obligated to participate in a play where the outcome is already written. If you catch yourself being the one who rehearses reality, ask yourself, why? What are you afraid of? What would happen if you entered a disagreement without a script, allowed yourself to be surprised, even to lose? Vulnerability is not weakness. Sometimes, it's the only path back to real connection. In a world obsessed with certainty, reality rehearsal is the ultimate illusion of safety, but it comes at a cost: the death of spontaneity, the erosion of trust, the loss of any space for two people to meet as equals, unguarded. Maybe it's time to stop running simulations and start living moments. Maybe it's time to admit we don't know how the conversation will end, and that's the only way it can matter. And if you find yourself feeling small in the face of someone's rehearsed confidence, remember, predictability is not the same as truth. The script may be flawless, but life, real, messy, human life, always has room for improvisation. Reclaim your unscripted self. The world needs fewer actors and more people willing to show up, uncertain but real. The Mirror Eclipse. Of all the invisible manipulations we rarely name, there is one that slips beneath the surface of our ambition and settles, almost unnoticed, at the bottom of our self-perception. It's called the Mirror Eclipse. It's not loud. It doesn't shout. It doesn't destroy you in one violent sweep. It's the quiet, daily warping of the things you once cherished about yourself. The subtle bending of dreams until even your own reflection seems to mock what you once wanted. Imagine sharing something precious. Your passion, your ambition, a vision you've protected since childhood. The room is quiet. The person across from you listens, eyes wide with a calculated softness that feels almost too encouraging, too attentive. You reveal a piece of your inner world, exposing it to the air, believing for a second that maybe, just maybe, someone else could believe in it as much as you do. But then the reflection changes. Their words don't outright crush your dream. Instead, they hold it up as if to admire it, but with a slant, a distortion. It's cute, they might say, as if your greatest hopes were a child's drawing. You've always been a bit idealistic. Wouldn't it be smarter to focus on something more realistic? Suddenly the dream looks different in their hands. Suddenly what you saw as noble or bold is reframed as naive, embarrassing, or even selfish. You laugh along, not wanting to seem stubborn or immature, but a chill creeps in. What if they're right? What if everyone sees your dreams as foolish, and you're the only one clinging to a sinking ship? This is not just a casual put-down or a fleeting moment of doubt. The Mirror Eclipse works over time. It requires repetition, subtlety, and a certain intimacy. It often comes from those you trust the most: parents, partners, teachers, friends, people who have a front-row seat to the theater of your life. They are the ones whose approval you crave, whose opinion feels like a kind of truth. They never say, "Give up, you'll never make it." Instead, they reflect your ambitions back to you with a warped lens. Maybe you tell your partner you want to change careers, chase a risky but exciting calling. Their support sounds like concern. "I just want you to be safe. What if it doesn't work out? Maybe you'll regret giving up what you already have." The message isn't "don't dream." It's, "I know you better than you know yourself, and you're not cut out for this." A subtle humiliation follows, as if you've broken a rule by wanting something extraordinary. Sometimes the Mirror Eclipse takes the form of friendly teasing, the writer who's called dramatic for keeping a journal, the dancer who's mocked for posting videos online, the entrepreneur laughed at for dreaming big in a small town. The words seem harmless, just jokes, just honesty, just love, but the impact is deep and cumulative. The next time you look at your ambitions, you see not the burning star they were, but their dim shadow, flickering weakly behind the judgment in someone else's eyes. This distortion is particularly devastating because it does not simply attack your ideas. It infects your very relationship with desire itself. It makes you second-guess what excites you, what brings you to life. Suddenly, your motivations seem childish, your goals too grand. You wonder if you were ever truly serious, or if your ambitions were just another symptom of immaturity. It's as if a fog rolls in every time you try to see yourself clearly, every time you try to take action. You start to feel embarrassment for even wanting what you once loved. The Mirror Eclipse is the ghost behind the phrase, "I used to want that, but I grew up." listen for it in the way adults dismiss children's dreams, or how teenagers are pressured to choose sensible careers to grow out of art, music, or invention. Hear it in the voice of the friend who only ever points out the risks, never the potential. Watch how it lives in workplaces where creative solutions are met with silence or sarcasm, in families where tradition drowns out originality, in relationships where compromise is code for shrinking into sameness. The mirror eclipse is not simply a moment, it is a process. It doesn't always end in open conflict. Sometimes, it manifests as a slow, quiet defeat, a gradual erosion of color from the canvas of your life. Days become predictable. The heart goes numb. You become a practical version of yourself, reliable and unimposing, but no longer truly alive. And yet, the mirror eclipse always leaves a trace. Some small part of you remembers the original dream, the artist who doodles in the margins of reports, the singer who hums alone in the car, the would-be traveler who gets lost in maps at midnight. These moments are tiny rebellions, signals that the original self is not dead, only hidden, waiting for sunlight. Sometimes, all it takes to break the spell is to see your dream reflected by someone who sees its true shape. Imagine confiding in a new friend who hears your passion and says, "That's amazing. Have you ever tried pursuing it?" Suddenly the fog lifts, the distorted reflection shatters, and for a moment you glimpse yourself clearly. Not foolish, not selfish, but alive with possibility. Let's look at some real examples. Think of a girl who grows up loving astronomy, collecting books and mapping stars on her ceiling. One day she tells a parent she wants to become an astrophysicist. The response is gentle but lethal. "That's cute, honey, but you know those jobs are for geniuses. Why not aim for something more secure?" Years later, she finds herself in an ordinary job, haunted by the question, was the dream hers or just a phase? Or the man who loved music, who played in bands through college. His friends joked that he'd never make money in music. "Everyone grows out of it eventually," they said. Each joke, each warning chipped away at his confidence. He packed away his guitar, convinced he was too old, too responsible, too late. It's important to recognize that the mirror eclipse doesn't always come from cruelty. Often, it's delivered by people who mean well, who want to protect you from disappointment or hardship. They believe they are saving you from pain. But in doing so, they become the architect of a different kind of loss, the loss of your belief in yourself. The wound is almost invisible because it hides beneath logic and love, beneath the pretense of realism. But the most dangerous part of the mirror eclipse is not that it distorts your dreams. It's that, over time, it teaches you to do it yourself. You become your own distorting mirror, preemptively abandoning dreams before anyone else can question them. You stop saying what you want. You shrink from risk. You become the voice that says, "Don't embarrass yourself," even before you've taken the first step. Yet the story does not have to end there. Awareness is the first step. If you've recognized this pattern, if you've heard your ambitions echoed back to you in ways that made you feel small or foolish, know that the reflection was never true. It was never about the value of your dream, but about the limitations of the lens through which someone else viewed it. Take back your right to want, to try, to risk, to fail, to succeed. Reclaim the original image. Remind yourself that every invention, every work of art, every breakthrough began as a dream that someone else thought was ridiculous. If you find yourself standing before a distorted mirror, remember, you are not the reflection. Oh, you are the source. You get to decide which dreams deserve to survive the eclipse. And sometimes, the only way to restore your vision is to step out of the shadow, to find a new mirror, one that reflects your possibility instead of your limits. The world is full of borrowed reflections, but your dreams were never childish or selfish. They were always your own, waiting for the courage to be seen again. Compassion, leverage. You know that ache in your chest when you see someone suffering? That instinct to comfort, to heal, to forgive. The best part of what makes us human. But what happens when that same compassion becomes a handle someone else uses to steer your life? A lever they pull every time you threaten to walk away or set a boundary. This is the dark alchemy of compassion leverage, and it works not because you are weak, but because you care deeply. Picture the friend who always seems to be in crisis. They call you in tears after every argument. They tell you no one else understands, and when you hint that you might need space, their sadness sharpens, as if you're abandoning a drowning soul, Or the partner who, every time you raise a concern, suddenly becomes the victim, their own pain louder than yours, their fears swelling until your complaints seem cruel in comparison. You step back, apologize for hurting them, and the conversation shifts. Now you're comforting them, patching up their wounds, and your original point dissolves like sugar in tea. This is compassion leverage in action. It's subtle at first. A sigh here, a tremble in the voice there, a perfectly timed memory of their hardships just when you're on the edge of saying, enough. You hesitate to push back, not because you're wrong, but because your empathy pulls you away from conflict. Over time, the pattern deepens. Every time you try to assert your needs, they tighten their grip. They remind you how much they've suffered, how much they need you, how fragile their world is without your care. And with each mercy you grant, your own boundaries grow softer, blurrier, easier to cross. You see it in family, where guilt and obligation hide inside stories of sacrifice. A parent who says, "After everything I've done for you, how could you treat me like this?" A sibling who turns every disagreement into a plea for sympathy until you find yourself swallowing anger, afraid your honesty will break them. In the workplace, it's the colleague who is always on the brink of burnout, who begs for understanding every time they miss a deadline, turning your attempts at fairness into evidence of your coldness. You start to feel cruel for wanting things to be fair. You're cast as the villain for trying to protect your own time and peace. Sometimes, it's obvious, manipulative, a calculated performance, tears on cue, apologies that loop back to their own suffering. But often, it's not so clear-cut. Many people wield compassion leverage without ever realizing it. Their pain is real, their needs are deep, and you, the empath, the helper, respond because that's what good people do. The problem is, each time you let guilt guide your decisions, you reinforce the pattern. They learn, consciously or not, that your mercy is a switch they can flip, that their pain can override your truth. It feels merciful in the moment. You believe you're saving someone from suffering, but slowly your own needs shrink. You learn to silence yourself to keep the peace. You let boundaries dissolve, and every time you hesitate to hurt them, their control over you grows tighter. You feel responsible for their happiness. You begin to question your own reality, wondering if your desires, your frustrations, your exhaustion are just signs that you lack compassion. This is the double bind of compassion leverage. The more you care, the less you're allowed to protect yourself. Think about how often you say yes when you want to say no, how often you agree just to avoid being the one who causes pain. Compassion is a gift, but in the wrong hands, it becomes a tool for control. When someone uses their suffering to win every argument, to shut down every boundary, to keep you from leaving, your kindness is no longer yours. It belongs to them. The hardest part is admitting when you're caught, because empathy is supposed to be a strength, a light in the world, a force for good. But it's only good when it's voluntary, when it comes from a place of freedom. When it's manipulated, it becomes a chain. You're not allowed to be angry, to walk away, to protect yourself, because every action is measured by its potential to wound someone else. You become a caretaker, not an equal. Your mercy is used against you until you forget you have a right to draw a line. The only way out is to remember that compassion does not mean self-sacrifice. Real empathy means caring for others without erasing yourself. It means recognizing when your kindness is being twisted, when your hesitation is costing you more than you can afford. It means having the courage to say, "I care about your pain, but I will not let it control me." You are allowed to set boundaries, to say no, to walk away from anyone who demands endless mercy at the expense of your well-being. In the end, compassion leverage is a distortion of what makes us human. It teaches us that our empathy is dangerous, when in truth, it's only dangerous when we forget that our own needs matter too. Hold on to your kindness, but guard it fiercely, because sometimes the bravest thing you can do is refuse to be manipulated by your own mercy. Selective memory trap. There's a strange kind of relationship that leaves you always feeling like you owe someone, no matter how much you give, how patient you are, how much you forgive. With every interaction, you feel yourself shrinking, as if every good deed slips away into some invisible drain, while your smallest missteps echo forever, growing heavier and more vivid each time they're mentioned. This is the selective memory trap, a psychological sleight of hand where your kindnesses are quietly erased and your mistakes are carved in stone. You are left walking on eggshells, paying interest on invisible debts, always trying to make up for a balance you can never clear. It starts subtly. You do something thoughtful, a favor, a gift, a sacrifice. Maybe you went out of your way to help them during a crisis. Maybe you put aside your own needs to comfort them, or you forgave an outburst, or you apologized even when you didn't have to. In the moment, they thank you, maybe even seem grateful. But as days or weeks pass, your kindness is forgotten. It fades from the story, quietly erased from the collective memory of the relationship. What lingers, however, are your moments of weakness, times you snapped, made a mistake, forgot a promise, failed to show up, or simply weren't perfect. And every time there's a conflict, every time you try to stand up for yourself or set a boundary, those moments are brought back with crystal clarity. It's as if you're on trial for the same mistakes over and over again. Your kindness has no weight. Your errors are magnified. No matter what you do, the scales are always tipped against you. It's exhausting. You start to second-guess yourself, apologizing for things you barely remember, offering reparations for wounds that should have healed long ago. You begin to feel unworthy, flawed, eternally indebted. Why does this happen? Why do some people wield memory like a weapon, using your mistakes as chains and erasing your goodness as if it never existed? For many, it's a form of psychological control. By constantly reminding you of your failings and erasing your acts of love and care, they keep you in a state of insecurity, always striving, always trying to be better. If you dare to confront them or express hurt, the narrative is quickly twisted. After everything you've done, how dare you act like the victim? They become the judge and jury, and you, the perpetual defendant. Sometimes, this behavior is rooted in narcissism. Narcissists are infamous for rewriting history to preserve their own sense of superiority. To maintain their role as the aggrieved or the benevolent, they must keep you in the role of the flawed, the careless, the one who needs to make amends. Your good deeds are an inconvenience. They undermine the story where you're the problem. Other times, it's not conscious manipulation, but an unconscious habit picked up from family dynamics, a learned behavior from parents or partners who only gave attention when mistakes were made, never when efforts were given. Let's look at a real example. Imagine you have a friend who always seems to remember when you cancel plans, but never acknowledges the dozens of times you showed up even when it was inconvenient for you. Or a parent who never mentions the years you spent caring for them, but brings up the one argument you had 6 years ago every time you try to express a need of your own. Or a partner who conveniently forgets all the small, daily kindnesses, meals made, messages sent, support given, but always has a mental archive of the times you forgot to say goodnight, or lost your temper, or missed an anniversary. You start to question your own memory. Was I really that selfish? Did I really mess up that often? This is where the trap becomes internalized. You begin to keep your own tally, but it never balances because the rules keep changing. The story is not about truth, it's about control. You are the villain in a script you didn't write, playing a part you never auditioned for. The worst part is, this kind of selective memory can infect even your most sincere relationships. You become so accustomed to having your goodness erased that you struggle to believe in your own worth. Even when you're with people who genuinely care, you apologize too much. You over-explain. You give more than you have, hoping someone will finally notice, finally remember, finally let you off the hook. But the trap is that nothing you do is ever enough. The memory of your kindness is never as strong as the memory of your mistakes, at least not in the mind of the person who benefits from keeping you indebted. So, how do you escape? The first step is to recognize the pattern. Notice when someone always has a ledger of your flaws, but never an account of your efforts. Notice when your acts of care are dismissed as what you're supposed to do, but your errors are immortalized. Pay attention to how you feel after every interaction. Do you feel lighter, supported, appreciated? Or do you walk away feeling smaller, more anxious, more desperate to prove yourself? Set boundaries with people who use your mistakes as leverage. Speak your truth, even if your voice shakes. I know I'm not perfect, but I've also given a lot to this relationship. I deserve for that to be seen. If the other person refuses to acknowledge your goodness, if they twist your words, or double down on your flaws, that's a warning sign. True connection isn't built on eternal debt. Real relationships hold space for both error and redemption. They remember kindness, not just mistakes. It's also crucial to rewrite the story for yourself. Keep a private record, not for vindication, but for truth. Remind yourself of the times you showed up, the forgiveness you gave, the love you offered. Don't let someone else's selective memory become the story you believe about yourself. Your worth is not measured by the tally of your mistakes, but by the wholeness of your intent and the courage of your care. And if you're someone who struggles to remember kindness, ask yourself why. Are you protecting yourself from vulnerability? Are you afraid that acknowledging others' goodness means giving up control? Healing begins with honesty and with letting go of the power that comes from holding others perpetually in debt. The selective memory trap is real and it's painful, but it's not the end of your story. The memory of your kindness may not always be cherished by others, but it can and must be cherished by you. Reclaim your narrative, walk free from invisible debts, and remember, the truest relationships are those in which your goodness is seen, your mistakes are forgiven, and your heart is finally allowed to rest. Future fake promises. Have you ever found yourself holding on to words that glimmer like sunrise on a new world? Someone stands before you, their eyes soft with hope, and tells you everything will change. Tomorrow. Next week. Next year. They paint futures so vivid you can taste the joy, feel the warmth of dreams finally realized. You believe them. Maybe you want to. After all, who doesn't want to believe in the promise of a better tomorrow? But what if that vision is a mirage, crafted not to be fulfilled, but to keep you waiting, investing, surviving on hope while reality quietly decays around you? This is the painful, hypnotic manipulation of future fake promises. It doesn't matter whether these promises come from a lover, a boss, a friend, or even a family member. The pattern is the same. You're pulled forward by words that shimmer with possibility. Once I get this new job, we'll finally move in together. After this project is done, I'll finally have time for you. Just give me a few months and things will be different. You'll see. They never say no. They never end things. They just postpone the present with a vision of the perfect future, buying time with your hope. Sometimes the future faking is obvious. Empty words, elaborate daydreams spun late at night, swelling with sentiment but never rooted in reality. But often it's subtle, almost invisible. It sounds responsible, patient, mature. They speak of needing just a little more time, a bit more money, a little more clarity. The more you wait, the more you invest. Soon you start planning your life around a fantasy timetable. You ignore the discomfort, the loneliness, the creeping sense that you're running in place. The impact is so profound because hope is such a primal human fuel. Hope keeps us alive through the darkest hours, but it also makes us vulnerable to those who know how to exploit it. When someone dangles the carrot of a perfect future, they control your present. You stop noticing how little is being given now because you're hypnotized by how much is promised soon. You accept crumbs, believing a feast is coming. You excuse neglect, rationalize broken boundaries, ignore the growing gap between word and action. Let's say you're in a relationship where you keep hearing about the magical vacation you'll take next year, or the proposal that will come when things settle down, or the way everything will be different once this rough patch is over. You wait. You plan. You remind yourself to be patient. After all, you've been given the gift of hope. But over time, days become weeks, and weeks become years. The promises stay exactly where they started, just out of reach. If you ask, the answer is always the same, just a little longer, just a little more faith. Or maybe your boss promises a promotion, a raise, or a project that will change everything. You're next in line, just stick it out. So you stay late, work harder, stretch yourself thinner. Every delay is met with a fresh promise. We're almost there. You trust, you wait, you hope, but your hard work is never rewarded, and every milestone moves a step further into the future. This isn't just disappointing, it's damaging. Future fake promises warp your sense of time, making you feel both stuck and rushed at the same time. You start living for tomorrow, ignoring the emptiness of today. You may even defend the one making the promises, because the alternative, admitting it's all a fantasy, feels unbearable. To lose hope would be to face the pain, the betrayal, the lost years. What makes future faking so sinister is that it doesn't need to be malicious to be effective. Sometimes, people genuinely want to be the person they pretend to be. Maybe they wish they could give you that perfect future. But intentions aren't actions, and good intentions don't fill the emptiness left by broken promises, whether they're lying to you, to themselves, or both. The result is the same. You're left waiting, always one step away from happiness, always hoping for a day that never arrives. Future faking feeds on your capacity to believe, to forgive, to stretch your patience. And the longer you wait, the harder it becomes to walk away. You've already invested so much. You don't want to give up now. The sun is always rising on the horizon, never above your head. If you stop waiting, what does that make you? Cynical? Impatient? Unfaithful? These questions become the chains that keep you stuck, defending your own slow heartbreak. But here's the truth. Real love, real loyalty, real commitment shows itself now, not later. The future is always uncertain, but the present is a test of someone's intentions. Promises that never cross the border into action are just beautifully worded cages. The person who loves you will build the future with you, not just for you, not just someday, but piece by piece, in the mundane, sometimes unglamorous reality of now. Escaping the gravity of future faking starts with this hard question: am I being loved, or am I being managed? Am I living for a dream that keeps slipping away, or am I being cherished here, today, with actions and not just words? When the answer hurts, it's a sign that your hope is being harvested, not honored. So, if you find yourself waiting, always waiting, for the day when everything will be right, pause. Ask yourself what is real and what is only promised. Does their vision for tomorrow line up with how they treat you today? Are their words matched by consistent effort, or only by new and shinier promises when you start to lose patience? At some point, the most loving thing you can do is let go of the fantasy and come home to the present, to your needs, to the reality of what's actually being offered. Hope is beautiful, but hope alone won't build a life. The only future that matters is the one you're building together right now, brick by brick, in truth, in action, in the daylight, not in the distant mirage of promises always just beyond your reach. The impossible standard. There's a kind of exhaustion that doesn't come from overwork or lack of sleep. It comes from chasing a finish line that keeps moving. You know the type of person I'm talking about. The one who always has a new rule, a new bar to clear, a new thing you're not doing right. At first, it looks like ambition, like motivation, someone who just expects the best from you. But then, slowly it dawns on you. Nothing you do is ever enough. No matter how hard you try, the standard keeps shifting, morphing just out of reach. This is the trap of the impossible standard. It starts innocently. Maybe it's a boss who always asks for just a little more, no matter how hard you push yourself. You hit your sales goal, and suddenly the target moves higher. You fix a flaw, and now there's a new flaw. Or maybe it's a parent whose praise is always one achievement away. That's good, but why not get an A+? Why not win the scholarship? Why not get into a better school? Or it's a partner who never seems quite satisfied, whose love is always conditional, always requiring proof. At first, you believe them. You tell yourself that these shifting demands are for your own good, that you're growing, that you'll feel worthy if you just keep climbing. So, you climb, you work late nights, you rehearse apologies, you read self-help books, change your hairstyle, perfect your routines, trying to meet standards that aren't really yours. And for a moment, when you do hit a milestone, you feel a flicker of hope. Maybe this time you'll be enough. But the celebration never lasts. As soon as you get close, the requirements change. What was amazing yesterday is just expected today. Why are you making such a big deal out of what you should have done all along? They'll say, erasing your effort with a single shrug. You learn that accomplishment doesn't buy you peace. It buys you a new set of expectations. This pattern is exhausting, and it's more common than we admit. It happens in families, relationships, workplaces, even within our own minds. When you're caught in it, your life becomes an endless self-improvement project with no finish line. The rules change as soon as you approach them. Sometimes, you don't even know what the rules are until you've already failed. It's not about achievement. It's about control. It's about keeping you off balance, always striving, never resting. Why do people do this? Sometimes, it's conscious manipulation. A boss who wants you always hungry for approval. A parent who confuses control with love. But often, it's unconscious, passed down from generations, who survive by believing that safety comes from constant vigilance, never letting your guard down. If you relax, if you celebrate yourself, you might get hurt. So the standard moves, and you learn to run. Here's what it looks like in real life. A child brings home a perfect report card, glowing with pride, only to hear, "You missed one question on the math test. What happened?" The pride vanishes, replaced by shame. Or an employee works weekends to deliver a perfect project, only to be told, "Next time, try to finish it faster." The reward for excellence is more work, less rest, and even higher expectations. Or, in a relationship, you finally open up about your feelings, only to be told, "That's not what I needed. Why can't you be more sensitive?" The script keeps flipping, and you're always a step behind. What happens to people living under the impossible standard? First, you start to doubt yourself. If every accomplishment is dismissed or ignored, you begin to wonder if you're truly capable of anything at all. You become hypervigilant, always scanning for ways you might fail, always bracing for criticism. You might become a perfectionist, convinced that if you just try harder, you'll finally win approval. Or, eventually, you might give up altogether, deciding there's no point in trying. In the end, whether you burn out or check out, you're left feeling hollow, but the damage goes deeper. When you're always chasing approval, your sense of self erodes. You lose touch with what you want, what you value, who you are apart from someone else's scoreboard. You become desperate for any sign that you're enough, willing to change yourself over and over just to earn a fleeting nod of acceptance. You might even start setting impossible standards for yourself, repeating the cycle long after the original voice is gone. So, how do you break free? First, you have to recognize the pattern for what it is. A game you can't win because the rules aren't meant to be fair. They're meant to keep you striving, keep you hooked. The most powerful act is to step off the treadmill and ask yourself, whose standards am I chasing? Are these goals even mine? Or are they someone else's way of keeping me small? The truth is, nobody can define your worth from outside. The finish line isn't out there. It's when you decide to stop running for permission and start building your own standards. Standards rooted in your own values, your own growth, your own joy. It means learning to give yourself the praise, the rest, the kindness you've always craved from others. And if you love someone caught in this trap, know that no amount of pushing or correcting will free them. What breaks the spell is unconditional support, the kind that says, "You are enough right now, even before you improve, even if you never change." It sounds simple, but for someone who's spent a lifetime chasing the impossible, it's the most radical thing they can hear. So, next time you find yourself breathless, running after a moving target, remember, the goalposts will never stop shifting as long as someone else is in charge. The real victory isn't reaching the impossible standard. It's refusing to let it define you at all. When you step back, when you set your own pace, the world doesn't end. In fact, that's when your real life, the life you choose, finally begins. The bone-deep secret. There's a particular kind of manipulation that slips so easily beneath the surface of our awareness, you may never spot it until years have passed. It is neither the blatant lie nor the everyday secret. It is the bone-deep secret. You may know it by another name, a sudden, heavy confession, so raw it feels impossible to fake. It happens in the softest moments, when someone turns to you and, voice trembling, says, "There's something I've never told anyone." In that instant, your heart slows, the air thickens. You become the chosen witness to their private darkness. This is not a story meant for just anyone. It feels like a privilege. But what you don't realize is that it's also a test, a transaction, a carefully chosen moment designed not just to unburden, but to bind. The bone-deep secret arrives dressed in vulnerability. It might sound like the revelation of a family betrayal, an old crime, a shame so profound it would, in another world, destroy trust. But here now, you are the recipient, the one person trusted above all others. Your mind floods with empathy and awe. Why would they trust you with this? What does it mean? You replay the words again and again, marveling at your new role as confidant. Maybe they say, "I've never told anyone, but I cheated on my college exams. I've always felt like a fraud, and I think I don't deserve anything good." Or maybe, "My father was abusive, and I still hear his voice when I'm afraid. I never share this with anyone, but you make me feel safe." Or perhaps it's more sinister. "I did something terrible once. Sometimes I think I'm broken inside. I'm not sure anyone could still love me if they knew." The confession is tailored, crafted to be just enough to shock, just enough to feel like forbidden knowledge. But here's the subtle trick. While you are lost in the drama of their honesty, you may not notice how the power shifts. Suddenly, you are the one who owes them loyalty. You hold their secret like a sacred object. To betray it would be to betray a soul. You start to feel protective, special. You imagine yourself as the guardian of something fragile and unique, a role that flatters you even as it cages you. It's as if their secret rewrites the rules of your relationship, giving you a purpose that you didn't have before. This is how the bone-deep secret works. It forges an invisible chain between you and the confessor, a chain made of trust, obligation, and a kind of awe. You are now invested, complicit. You become the silent protector of their hidden truth, even if it was never yours to carry. You may not realize it, but your loyalty has been recruited, sometimes for life. Let's look at how this plays out in everyday life. Imagine a boss who gathers you after hours, voice low, and tells you about the company's darkest struggles. You're the only one I trust with this information. If anyone else found out, it could ruin us. Suddenly your job is not just a job, it's a mission. You feel honored, even as the burden begins to weigh. Or a friend who confides in you about a mental health crisis. No one else knows, they whisper. I need you to promise not to tell. Your identity as their friend is now defined by this shared secret. The bond feels unbreakable, but also, you realize, inescapable. The bone-deep secret can even be weaponized in romance. Someone you've just started seeing pulls you into their orbit with a revelation, a hidden trauma, a lost child, a moment of personal ruin. It feels like they're giving you the key to their soul, making you believe you're different, that you matter more than anyone else. The relationship accelerates, fueled by the gravity of their confession. You feel responsible for their healing, their happiness. You stay loyal even when the red flags begin to multiply, because to abandon them now would be to abandon the part of yourself that wants to save them. It's easy to mistake this for true intimacy. After all, isn't vulnerability the foundation of all deep human connection? Yes, but only when it's mutual, gradual, and unforced. The bone-deep secret short-circuits that process. It skips the slow building of trust, the sharing of everyday truths, and jumps straight to the final act. It demands loyalty before you even know what you're loyal to. The manipulation becomes clear only in retrospect. Months or years later, you might realize you have never seen them return the trust. They know your reactions, but you do not know their real intentions. Their truth may have even been exaggerated or rehearsed for maximum impact. Sometimes, the secret wasn't even real. It was a fabrication, bait for your compassion, a test to see if you'd pass their unspoken audition. Even when the secret is true, the way it's deployed matters. The bone-deep secret is not about healing, but about recruiting. The confessor is not looking to be known, but to be served, to secure your presence, your silence, your support, whatever is most valuable to them. In families, this can look like a parent confiding in a child about marital problems, enlisting them as a surrogate spouse or therapist. In workplaces, it means drawing you into drama you never signed up for, then expecting unwavering loyalty when conflict arrives. In friendships, it can feel like being asked to choose sides forever, with no way to step away without shattering the illusion of closeness. If you've ever been caught in this web, you know how hard it is to leave. You worry what will happen if the secret gets out. You imagine yourself as a traitor, a villain. That's the power of the bone-deep secret. It does not simply ask for your sympathy. It redefines your loyalty as your identity. But there is a way out. Start by asking, did you choose this burden? Was trust given mutually, or demanded all at once? Are you allowed to set boundaries, or does any distance feel like betrayal? Real connection grows in sunlight, not in the shadows of secrets. Vulnerability should feel freeing, not binding. The bone-deep secret is a chain only if you let it be. You can care for someone without letting their pain become the lock on your freedom. Remember, true loyalty is born of honesty, respect, and time, not a single confession, no matter how shocking. The secrets you carry are not proof of your worth. You are not required to be anyone's silent witness, unless you freely choose it. The next time someone offers you a bone-deep secret, pause. Ask yourself what it costs you to hold it, and if it's a price you're truly willing to pay. In that choice, you reclaim the power to choose your own loyalty, your own truth, and your own path. Cold withdrawal phase. It starts so subtly you barely notice. A day ago, their phone would light up with your name and their response was instant, full of jokes, warmth, and attention that made you feel seen in ways you'd never dared to hope for. Maybe it's a partner, a friend, someone you admired. But now, with no warning, their energy vanishes. Your messages hang in the air longer, the replies shorter, colder, stripped of the little kindnesses that once made you feel special. You stare at your screen, replaying conversations in your mind, scanning for the moment when things shifted. What did you say wrong? Was there something you missed? Suddenly you're alone in a room that was overflowing with connection just yesterday, desperate for a reason, any reason, for the chill now creeping in. This is the cold withdrawal phase, the moment someone who once flooded your world with affection suddenly cuts off the supply, rationing out warmth in small, confusing fragments. You're left in the cold, not because you've changed, but because they have decided to pull away. And the worst part is, they give you no explanation. You're left grasping for answers, replaying memories like detectives at a crime scene, convinced the evidence must be there if you just look hard enough. At first, you rationalize. Maybe they're busy, maybe something happened, maybe it's just a bad day. But as hours stretch to days, a knot tightens in your chest. You send a funny story, just like before, but the reply is a flat LOL. You share a worry, and their response is a cold, sorry to hear that. You start second-guessing every word, wondering if you've become boring, annoying, too much. They haven't said anything is wrong, but the withdrawal is unmistakable, a slow, deliberate turning away, so subtle it can almost be denied if you ever bring it up. You might ask gently, "Are you okay?" Or, "Did I do something?" They brush it off. "No, just tired," or "You're overthinking." But you know better. The shift is real. The distance is cold and deliberate. And suddenly you're doing emotional acrobatics just to get back a hint of that old warmth. You try harder. Longer messages, sweeter words, reminders of happy memories, hoping to thaw the ice. Sometimes you get a crumb, a tiny compliment, a sudden moment of attention, and it feels like sunshine after a long night. But just as quickly, it's gone, and you're left chasing warmth that seems to shrink the more you pursue it. The cold withdrawal phase is a manipulation so quiet, it's almost invisible. It works because humans are wired to seek connection, to crave resolution. When someone we care about pulls away without reason, our brain floods with anxiety, demanding an answer, urging us to fix the unknown mistake. You become so preoccupied with regaining their approval that you ignore your own needs, your own reality. Their absence makes you desperate. Their little tokens of affection become your reward for good behavior, and your world shrinks to the size of their next response. This isn't just about romance. Friends can do it too. A best friend who suddenly starts making plans without you, a coworker who goes from banter to silence, a family member who drops out of conversation with no warning. The unpredictability is what makes it so powerful. You never know when the warmth will return or what you have to do to earn it, so you try everything. Apologies, gifts, self-blame, promises to be better. Their coldness shapes your behavior until you're not acting from love, but from fear. Fear of being abandoned, of never being let back in. Sometimes the person withdrawing isn't even fully aware they're doing it. They might be overwhelmed, distracted, caught up in their own world. But in manipulative dynamics, cold withdrawal is a tool, a way to control, to keep you anxious, compliant, always reaching for their approval. It keeps you unbalanced, never quite secure, and makes their attention feel like a prize you have to earn rather than something freely given. The damage is subtle, but real. You start to doubt your instincts, to distrust your memories, to question whether you deserve love at all. Your self-esteem erodes, replaced by a gnawing hunger for validation. You may even tell yourself that you're the problem, that if you could just be better, the warmth would return. But the truth is, no one deserves to be rationed love, to be kept waiting in the cold for scraps of kindness. Escaping the cold withdrawal phase means seeing the pattern for what it is. It means resisting the urge to chase after crumbs, and instead stepping back, reclaiming your dignity, remembering that your worth isn't measured by someone else's unpredictable affection. Real connection doesn't disappear without warning, doesn't punish with silence, doesn't keep you guessing. Healthy love, healthy friendship, healthy family, all these things are built on consistency, on honest communication, on warmth that isn't used as a weapon. You have the right to ask for clarity, to demand honesty, to step away from anyone who uses distance to control you. The warmth you crave cannot be earned by self-betrayal or constant appeasement. Sometimes, The bravest thing you can do is stop chasing, stand still, and let the coldness reveal the truth, that you deserve to be met in the light, not left waiting in the shadows of someone else's silence. The bonding trauma. You wake up in the middle of the night to a frantic call. Your friend is in tears, convinced someone is outside their door, begging you to come over. You race across town, adrenaline pumping, heart thundering, desperate to help. By the time you arrive, they collapse in your arms, sobbing, shaking, overwhelmed by fear. The next day, things have calmed down, but you feel forever changed, tethered by the memory of that night. It feels like you survived something together, something only the two of you could ever truly understand. The intimacy is overwhelming, and you feel closer to them than you've ever felt to anyone before. But what if the crisis wasn't as real as it seemed? What if the danger was exaggerated or invented? This is the dark machinery behind the bonding trauma, a psychological trap in which someone manufactures or manipulates intense moments of crisis, not to seek support, but to forge an unbreakable chain of loyalty between you and them. We all know that surviving hardship together creates deep bonds. Soldiers returning from war, survivors of disasters, people who've been through illness, loss, or tragedy, they often describe a sense of kinship that can't be explained in words. Psychologists call it trauma bonding, and it's one of the most powerful social glues known to the human brain. When you experience fear, danger, or pain alongside another person, your mind forges a connection that's not just emotional, but chemical. Adrenaline, cortisol, and oxytocin flood your system, etching the memory into your bones. You remember not only what happened, but who was with you when it did. But some people learn to hack this system. They don't wait for real crises. They create them. They turn everyday conflicts into emergencies, escalate small problems into chaos, or invent threats out of thin air. Sometimes it's a medical scare that always seems to strike when you're about to leave town. Sometimes it's a fight with a stranger, a terrifying phone call, a meltdown over something minor. Every time you're pulled in, you become the rescuer, the witness, the only person who truly understands what they're going through. With each survived ordeal, you become more entangled. You start to believe that you're indispensable, that no one else could help them the way you can. And that's exactly what they want. Not just your attention, but your loyalty, your protection, your presence, locked in place by the memory of shared suffering. Consider the partner who seems to attract drama everywhere they go. Whenever you try to set boundaries, they're struck by a new emergency. If you want space, suddenly there's a health scare, a car accident, a lost job, a family crisis. It always happens just as you're about to step back or question the relationship. You rush to their side again and again, convinced that if you leave, something truly terrible will happen. You become their caretaker, their savior, their emotional anchor. Or think of the friend who confides in you about terrifying events that never seem to happen when others are around. They tell you stories of being stalked, harassed, or targeted. But there's never any evidence, no witnesses, just your word against theirs. Each time, you're drawn in deeper, more convinced that you're their only hope. This is the bonding trauma at work. A cycle of manufactured crisis, emotional rescue, and deep independency. The longer you stay, the harder it is to imagine a world where your loyalty isn't owed, where your presence isn't demanded as payment for past heroics. Why does it work? The answer lies deep in human psychology. Our brains are programmed to value those who share our most vulnerable moments. In ancient times, survival often depended on having someone by your side during danger. That legacy is still hardwired into us. So when someone repeatedly engineers moments of fear or desperation, your mind latches on, replaying the adrenaline and relief, the gratitude, and the bond. Over time, you mistake manipulation for destiny, trauma for intimacy. But this connection is a mirage, not a miracle. The person engineering these crises isn't building a relationship. They're forging a cage. They depend on your need to feel needed, your loyalty to shared struggle, your guilt at the idea of walking away after all you've survived together. The more you invest, the more responsible you feel for their happiness, their safety, their survival. Meanwhile, your own needs, fears, and boundaries fade into the background. You forget who you were before the drama began. The consequences are profound. People trapped in cycles of bonding trauma often feel isolated, exhausted, and confused. You question your own judgment. Am I the only one who sees how serious this is? Why does nobody else believe them? Why do I feel like I'm losing myself? You might feel guilty for even asking these questions, as if doubting their pain is a betrayal. But the real betrayal is the theft of your sense of self, your freedom, your right to choose where your loyalty goes. How can you recognize this pattern? Look for recurring emergencies that always demand your presence and attention. Notice if crises intensify whenever you pull away, set boundaries, or seek independence. Pay attention to how you feel after every episode. Are you drained, anxious, obligated? Do you feel like you're always on call, never able to relax? Do you find yourself explaining away their behavior to others, or hiding the truth about what's happening? Escaping the bonding trauma means reclaiming your right to peace. It means realizing that loyalty built on fake or exaggerated emergencies is not love, and that rescuing someone over and over again will never heal them, or you. It means asking hard questions. Who am I without this chaos? What would my life be if I didn't have to be the hero every day? The strongest relationships are those where trust is forged in honesty, not in fear. True intimacy grows from real vulnerability, not from endless drama. You deserve loyalty that's freely given, not welded by crisis after crisis. Remember, the courage to walk away from manufactured suffering is often the first step toward real freedom and toward relationships that honor not just what you've survived, but who you really are. Performance of remorse. There's a moment that comes after the damage is done, after the harsh words, the betrayal, the broken promise. Silence thickens the room. Then, as if on cue, the one who hurt you dissolves into a flood of apology. Tears fall. Their voice trembles. Hands shake as they reach for yours. "I'm so sorry," they whisper. "I can't believe I hurt you. I swear. I'll never do it again." In that instant, the pain you felt is washed over by a tidal wave of their regret. You want to believe them. The emotional storm is so raw, so convincing. But somewhere deep inside, a question shivers. Is this real? Or is this the performance of remorse? This phenomenon is as old as human relationships. It's not just an apology, it's a spectacle, an elaborate performance designed to capture your forgiveness before you've even had time to process your pain. They'll cry, they'll collapse, they'll vow in dramatic declarations, painting a picture of themselves as wounded, devastated by what they've done. For a moment, the focus shifts from your suffering to their suffering about what they did to you. The spotlight moves from your pain to their performance. At first, it's easy to confuse this with true remorse. Because who would fake such intensity? Who would go to such lengths, crying in public, writing desperate letters, making grand gestures, just to win your forgiveness? But the answer is simple. People who want to reset the emotional ledger without actually changing anything. People who know that performance can short-circuit your anger and confusion and restore the equilibrium they crave without facing the uncomfortable work of real change. True remorse is quiet. It's steady, patient, often awkward. It listens more than it speaks. It doesn't just want to be forgiven. It wants to understand, to heal, to transform. But the performance of remorse is different. It's dramatic. It's urgent. It's designed to make you feel so overwhelmed by their pain that you can't bear to be angry anymore. You end up comforting the person who hurt you, assuring them it wasn't all that bad, or that you believe in their ability to do better. Imagine you're in a relationship where every time there's a conflict, a lie, a betrayal, a broken promise, it's followed by an outpouring of regret. Maybe they cry so hard you can't help but hold them. Maybe they make grand gestures, gifts, public apologies, tearful social media posts. Maybe they promise therapy, or change, or even vow to cut themselves off from everyone who could possibly tempt them to hurt you again. For a while, you believe it. The intensity feels like proof, but time passes, and nothing actually changes. The cycle resets. The same hurt, the same performance, over and over. This isn't just something that happens in romantic relationships. You see it in families. The parent who is explosive one moment and the most sorry person in the world the next, only to repeat the cycle. You see it in friendships. The friend who constantly lets you down, but always manages to break down in tears and make you feel guilty for being upset. Even in workplaces, the boss who feels awful about overworking you promises it'll never happen again, but the deadlines never stop. Why do we fall for the performance of remorse? Partly, it's because we want to believe people can change. We want to believe in redemption, in second chances. Empathy makes us vulnerable to tears, to pain, especially when the pain is displayed so openly. But on a deeper level, the performance is designed to distract you from the only question that actually matters. Will their behavior change? Not, do they feel bad? But are they willing to do the work to ensure this never happens again? The performance of remorse exploits your compassion. It counts on your need for closure, for peace, for the relationship to return to normal. It's the emotional version of putting on a play. The costumes are regret, the props are tears and promises. The script is always, I'll do anything to make this right. But after the curtain falls, life returns to the same script as before. No therapy, no boundaries, no honest examination of why the harm happened in the first place. Over time, this cycle erodes your trust, not just in the other person, but in your own ability to judge sincerity. You start to doubt yourself. Am I being too harsh? Am I expecting too much? Maybe this time will be different. You become conditioned to accept apology as a substitute for change. You might even start to anticipate the performance. After every blow, the show, then the same old habits. The emotional roller coaster leaves you exhausted, anxious, unsure of what's real. If you find yourself in this cycle, pause. Ask yourself, after all the tears and promises, does anything actually change? Are boundaries respected? Is the pattern broken, or does it repeat? Real remorse is measured in effort, not in emotion. It's quiet, sometimes clumsy, but always visible in changed behavior. Sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is to step back from the performance, to let the apology land without immediately forgiving, to insist on seeing real change before you give your trust again. Because love, real love, isn't a stage. It's not measured by how convincingly someone can cry. It's measured by what happens after the curtain falls, when the show is over, and all that remains is the slow, humble work of rebuilding trust. Forgiveness is beautiful, but it is not owed after a single performance. It is earned over time through actions that prove the apology was more than words. The performance of remorse will tempt you to believe in a quick fix, a dramatic, beautiful return to normal. But healing, if it is to last, requires more. It requires truth. It requires action. It requires that the person who hurt you wants to do the quiet, unglamorous work of becoming worthy of your forgiveness. So, watch the performance, listen to the words, but do not let the show become a substitute for the change you need and deserve. The only apology that matters is the one written, slowly, in the choices a person makes when no one is watching. And if you find yourself waiting for the encore of another dramatic regret, remember, you deserve better than a performance. You deserve the real thing. Crisis relocation move. Imagine this. You're told that everything you know, your city, your routines, the people who remember your childhood laugh, and your worst heartbreak, is about to be left behind, and it's for your own good. Maybe it's a partner with 1,000 reasons, a family member convinced they know best, or a boss who says opportunity knocks in a faraway place. Your promised growth, fresh starts, escape from old problems. But beneath the optimism, something colder is happening. You're being moved, not by your own will, but by someone else's design. And when the dust settles, you realize what you've really lost, the power to compare your new reality with what you left behind. This is the crisis relocation move, a manipulation so clever it masquerades as concern, as love, as the solution to all your problems. But look closely, and it's a cage being assembled around you, piece by piece, under the cover of care. At first, it seems like an adventure. Maybe you even wanted a change. The person pushing the move paints vivid pictures. Things will be better there. You'll make new friends. The old place was holding you back. Sometimes, it's framed as rescue, getting away from bad influences, a fresh start after a mistake, a way to leave trauma behind. It's almost always wrapped in the language of love and necessity. I'm only doing this for you. You'll thank me later. Their voice is so convincing, it's easy to believe you're being protected. But soon, reality sharpens. The familiar is gone. The people who might have seen through the manipulator's tactics, the ones who could have offered perspective or a lifeline, are now hundreds or thousands of miles away. It's hard to visit, harder to reach out, almost impossible to confide. Even small comforts, a favorite coffee shop, the park where you cleared your head, friends who understood your silences, have vanished. The new world feels like a blank page, but not in the hopeful way. It's as if you're standing on a stage with the lights out, waiting for the script to start. But no one's told you your lines. This isolation isn't an accident. It's the plan. Because when you can't compare your new life to your old one, you can't measure what's changed, what you've lost, or what's wrong. Your sense of normal gets rewritten day by the person who relocated you. It's easier for them to define your reality when the reference points are gone. You're more dependent, more likely to look to them for cues. What's safe, what's good, what's real. Let's make this painfully clear with an example. Picture a controlling partner who decides you both should move to a new city for a better job or for more peace. Maybe you had doubts, but they insisted, "Trust me, this is the best thing for us." The move happens. Suddenly you're far from friends and family, alone in a new place. When arguments happen, there's no one to call, nowhere familiar to retreat. If you complain, they say you're ungrateful or too negative or that you're just not trying hard enough. Your feelings become harder to trust because the world you knew is gone, and your only mirror is the person who brought you here. This can happen to children too, uprooted from schools and grandparents by adults who claim to know best. The move is explained as a great opportunity, but the real motive is often control or escape from accountability. The child loses the people who might have noticed signs of distress, the teachers who might have asked questions. Isolation becomes the new normal, wrapped in the language of sacrifice. It happens in workplaces as well. An employee is relocated for a promotion, only to find themselves in an office where the old rules don't apply, old friends aren't there, and the new environment is less supportive than promised. What feels like advancement turns out to be exile. At its core, the crisis relocation move is about erasing context. When you lose your ability to compare the present to the past, you become easier to shape, to gaslight, to manage. If you raise concerns, the manipulator can always say, "You're just homesick," or "You're romanticizing the past," or even, "You'd be worse off if we'd stayed." They get to be the only narrator of your story, editing your memories and doubts until you can't tell what's real anymore. The psychological toll is immense. Isolation breeds self-doubt. When you feel alone in your experience, you start to believe maybe you are the problem. Maybe you are too sensitive, too inflexible, too nostalgic. The more you lose your roots, the more desperate you become for belonging, even if the only person offering it is the one who cut you off in the first place. Why do people do this? Sometimes it's calculated. They know that isolation equals dependence, and dependence equals control. Sometimes it's subconscious, a legacy of their own trauma, their own fear that if you are connected to your old world, you might see them clearly, or choose someone else, or leave. But the effect is the same. Your life becomes smaller, not because you chose it, but because someone else orchestrated it, all while insisting it's for your good. How do you fight back? The first step is recognizing what's happening. Name it. This isn't just a move. This is a manufactured crisis, a reset that benefits someone else more than you. Second, preserve your connections, however you can. Reach back, even if it feels awkward. Call old friends, send letters, remind yourself of who you were before the move. Keep pieces of your old life alive, not out of nostalgia, but as anchors to reality. Most of all, trust your gut. If you feel smaller, less sure, more alone after a move that was supposed to help you, don't ignore that signal. Healthy change expands your world. Manipulation shrinks it. The crisis relocation move is one of the most insidious tricks in the playbook of control. It isolates you physically, emotionally, and mentally, until the only perspective left is the one that benefits the person who moved you. But the past is not erased. Your truth, your memories, your roots are still there. You just have to reach back and hold on, long enough to reclaim your own story, no matter where you are. The Foxhole Confidant. There is a psychological trap so cunning, so ancient, that most people never see it until the damage is already done. It's called the Foxhole Confidant. On the surface, it feels like the most natural thing in the world. Two people, side by side, united against a world that misunderstands or mistreats them. But beneath that apparent intimacy, there's a darker game at work. One in which trust is manufactured, boundaries are dissolved, and all along, you are being primed for betrayal. Imagine the moment. You're at work, at school, or among friends, and someone quietly pulls you aside. Their voice lowers, their eyes dart, and then they offer you a secret alliance. Have you noticed how unfair the boss has been lately? They whisper, or, honestly, everyone else here is just pretending. I can't stand how fake they are. Maybe it's more personal. I get the feeling Sarah doesn't like you either. She said something strange about you last week, but don't worry, I'd never repeat it. Instantly the room changes. Now there is an inside and an outside, an us and a them. You are offered a rare intimacy, the warmth of shared grievance, the thrill of knowing someone else sees through the same illusions you do. The Foxhole Confidant uses this dynamic to infiltrate your defenses. When people believe they have a common enemy, they become more loyal, more open, more vulnerable. Studies in psychology show that nothing unites humans faster than an outside threat. It's the logic of the foxhole. When bombs are falling, anyone beside you becomes a brother in arms. The same mechanism that forges true camaraderie in danger is, in safe spaces, a weapon of manipulation. The Foxhole Confidant weaponizes paranoia, but cloaks it in empathy. By sharing their fears or doubts about others, they make you feel special, chosen, trusted. They invite you to vent, to share your private opinions and frustrations, because, after all, you're allies now, right? But every confession you make, every raw edge you reveal, becomes ammunition. Your secrets, your complaints, your moments of weakness are quietly noted, cataloged, and prepared for a future you can't see. Let's make this real with a story. Imagine a new colleague, Alex, who quickly spots your frustration with management. One day over coffee, Alex leans in and confides, "I don't trust half the people here. They're all out for themselves. But you, I can tell you're different. Let's watch each other's backs." At first, it feels empowering. Someone finally understands. You share stories, gripes, even fears you'd never voice in public. You feel safer, stronger. But behind the scenes, Alex is gathering these confidences, perhaps even exaggerating them to others, painting you as divisive, negative, or untrustworthy. Months later, when you're blindsided by rumors or scapegoated for problems you never caused, the truth emerges. The enemy was never out there. It was the person who convinced you to stand beside them in the foxhole. Why does this work so well? It's because we all crave belonging and safety, especially in environments where we feel exposed or outnumbered. The Foxhole Confidant is a master of reading those anxieties and providing exactly the balm you need, a partner in adversity, a listening ear, someone who gets your struggle. But their empathy is a costume. They are not protecting you, they are lulling you. They win your trust by offering the illusion of solidarity, only to turn that trust against you at the moment you are most defenseless. This tactic is not limited to workplaces. It happens in families, where one sibling pulls another into whispered alliances against a parent or a third sibling, only to later reveal those secrets when it serves their interests. It happens in friend groups, where someone positions themselves as your only real friend, encouraging you to cut others off or mistrust the group. It's a classic move among narcissists and manipulators. Create a common foe, then use the alliance to isolate and control. The pain of discovering you were the real target is sharp and disorienting. You might replay every conversation, searching for signs you missed. How could you have been so blind? The truth is, the Foxhole Confidant is often incredibly skilled at mirroring your own values, worries, and language. They listen with apparent care, echo your frustrations, and always know just what to say to earn your faith. The intimacy feels real, but the foundation is a lie. The real danger comes after the betrayal, when you begin to distrust not only others, but your own instincts. You question your ability to read people. You become wary of new friendships, afraid that every bond hides a trap. This is the poison left by the Foxhole Confidant. They don't just wound you once, they change how you approach connection itself. So, how do you protect yourself? Start by paying attention to anyone who is too eager to declare us versus them, especially early in a relationship. Notice if their loyalty requires you to isolate from others, share secrets, or engage in gossip. Healthy alliances are based on mutual respect and honest communication, not secrecy and suspicion. Ask yourself, do I feel more free or more trapped after talking to this person? Do I trust them to protect my interests or only their own? Remember, true confidants encourage you to be your best, most open self. They don't require you to pick sides, and they certainly don't use your vulnerability as leverage. The next time someone offers you a foxhole, ask yourself, is the enemy really out there or sitting right beside you, whispering about war while preparing to fire the first shot? In that awareness, you reclaim your power. You step out of the foxhole. You choose your own allies on your own terms. And you never, ever let someone else define your battles for you. The coin toss. Praise. One day you feel like the sun. Their eyes light up when you walk in. Their words are threaded with admiration. Their laughter bright and contagious, as if you are the answer to everything they've been waiting for. They praise your ideas, marvel at your quirks, and tell you that no one has ever made them feel this way. In those moments, you're high on approval, intoxicated by the certainty that you matter, that you are exceptional in their world. But just as quickly, the coin flips. A week later, or maybe a day or an hour, it changes. The admiration is gone, replaced by subtle jabs, eye rolls, or even outright contempt. Suddenly your jokes aren't funny. Your talents are dismissed, and everything you do is too much or not enough. You find yourself scrambling to regain the warmth you tasted before. You analyze every detail, desperate to figure out what went wrong, searching for the switch you must have triggered. This is the coin toss praise, a psychological seesaw where you are kept off balance, swinging between the dizzying high of being adored and the crushing low of being diminished. It's a cycle designed to make you addicted, to keep you coming back for another hit of validation, hoping the coin will land on the side of praise just one more time. The unpredictability is the point. It's what keeps you hooked. Think of it as a slot machine of affection. Sometimes you win big, smiles, compliments, the feeling of being chosen. Other times, you get nothing or worse. Criticism, distance, sarcasm. The randomness keeps you pulling the lever, telling yourself that if you just try a little harder, say the right thing, and be the right version of yourself, you'll hit the jackpot again. But in truth, the odds are stacked against you from the start. The people who use coin toss praise are often charming, magnetic, and deeply skilled at reading what makes you tick. They know when you're at your most vulnerable, and that's when they turn on the admiration full blast, making you feel like you finally arrived in the warmth you always craved. But just as your guard drops, they withdraw, leaving you cold and confused. You wonder if you're imagining it, if you're too sensitive, if you just need to be more patient, more forgiving. This dynamic shows up everywhere. In romantic relationships, it can look like passionate declarations followed by days of silence or criticism. One moment, they call you beautiful. The next, they point out your flaws with a smirk. In friendships, it's the buddy who hypes you up one night, then ignores your messages or teases you mercilessly the next. Even at work, a boss can swing from praising your efforts to highlighting your mistakes, never letting you settle into the security of knowing where you stand. Over time, the coin toss praise changes you. You become hyper-attuned to their mood, reading the smallest cues, adjusting your words and actions to avoid the flip to contempt. You start measuring your worth by their reactions, shrinking when they're cold and expanding when they're warm. You might even start to crave their approval more than your own sense of self, trading authenticity for a chance at another round of praise. The worst part is how this cycle rewires your brain. Psychologists call it intermittent reinforcement, the most addictive pattern of reward, the same principle that keeps gamblers glued to their slot machines. When rewards are unpredictable, the anticipation itself becomes a drug, and you keep coming back for more, even when the wins are fewer and further between. You start to notice that the admiration you once believed was genuine is just another side of the coin, no more real than the contempt it's paired with. But by then, your self-esteem is tangled up in their approval, and it feels impossible to walk away. You tell yourself that if you could just figure out the secret formula, you'd be able to hold on to the praise and banish the criticism for good. Breaking free from the coin toss praise means facing the truth. Their validation is not a gift, but a tool for control. The highs feel real, but they are designed to make the lows hurt even more. You deserve steady warmth, not unpredictable weather. You deserve to be valued for who you are, not for how well you perform, in a game you never agreed to play. You will be tempted to stay, hoping for the coin to land on the side of love one more time. But every spin only makes you more dependent, more anxious, more lost in the chaos of someone else's approval. The bravest thing you can do is stop playing, to reclaim your self-worth from hands that treat it like a toy. You are more than the sum of someone else's praise or contempt. You are steady, whole, and worthy of a love that doesn't come and go with the toss of a coin. Identity harvesting. You meet someone who seems to truly get you. They laugh at your jokes, echo your opinions, pick up your slang as if it's always been theirs. You share a new obsession, a band, a movie, a philosophy, and suddenly it's their favorite too. At first, it feels like magic, like the rare thrill of finding your own reflection in someone else. You think you've discovered a soulmate, a twin flame, or at the very least, a kindred spirit in a lonely world. But as weeks pass, something strange begins to happen. The boundaries of yourself feel less secure. Your unique way of speaking, words, phrases, quirks that once set you apart, are now part of their daily language. Your tastes and interests echo back at you, not as compliments, but as copies. Even your style starts to show up in their clothes, their hobbies, the way they move through the world. It's as if they are quietly downloading your identity, piece by piece, while you watch from behind glass. At first, you shrug it off. Isn't imitation the sincerest form of flattery? Isn't it normal for close friends or partners to influence each other? But this is different. This isn't two people growing together, blending in the healthy mess of intimacy. This is extraction, a slow, quiet harvesting of the things that make you, you. Every time you turn around, your blueprint has been duplicated, and you're left a little more transparent, a little more hollow, a little less sure of what's actually yours. This is the phenomenon of identity harvesting, and it's far more insidious than simple mimicry. People who engage in identity harvesting are rarely aware of the devastation they cause. Some do it out of deep insecurity, needing to anchor themselves to someone else's selfhood because they can't tolerate the emptiness inside. Others do it as a form of social survival, copying whoever seems most admired, most authentic, most original. But for some, it's deliberate, a kind of predatory camouflage, allowing them to blend in, gain your trust, and eventually control how you see yourself. Let's go deeper. Imagine you're a creative person. You invent phrases, tell stories in a certain rhythm, wear colors nobody else dares to wear. Your partner or friend starts off by admiring your quirks, but soon you notice them retelling your jokes to others, taking credit for your ideas, dressing in your colors, even expressing opinions that used to be only yours. At first, you're proud, but gradually, your identity feels less like something you own and more like something you're renting, something on loan to someone else. You wonder, if I stopped speaking, would my voice still exist? If I changed, would they change too? The effect is deeply destabilizing. The most sacred human need is to be recognized as unique, to have your own voice, your own style, your own way of seeing the world. When someone harvests your identity, they don't just steal your expressions or your playlists. They steal your sense of authorship, the invisible claim you have to your own existence. Over time, this can lead to profound self-doubt. You stop sharing your passions because you're afraid they'll be co-opted. You censor your thoughts, guard your creativity, even start to question whether you were ever original to begin with. Identity harvesters thrive in environments where boundaries are blurred. Intense friendships, romantic relationships, tightly knit creative circles. Their mimicry is usually gradual, almost imperceptible. They're not interested in learning from you. They want to become you. They study your vocabulary, adopt your mannerisms, weave your worldview into their own. And because they crave the acceptance and authenticity you radiate, they often become more you than you are, outshining you in your own skin. It's not uncommon to see your inner circle noticing before you do. "Isn't that your thing?" they'll whisper, watching your friend recite your favorite lines or sport your signature style. The confusion can lead to tension and resentment, but the real victim is your sense of self. You begin to feel replaceable, like a ghost haunting your own life. There's another layer, too, a darker one. For some, identity harvesting is about power. If they can absorb your voice, your stories, your image, they can control the narrative. They can gaslight you, telling you that you're imagining things, that you never said what you thought you did, that your ideas were never yours to begin with. It's an erasure, a kind of psychological colonization, where your uniqueness becomes community property, claimed by someone else. So, how do you reclaim yourself? The first step is to notice. Pay attention to how you feel after spending time with them. Do you feel energized, inspired, and respected, or drained, erased, and confused? Do you see yourself reflected back at you in ways that feel validating, or ways that make you doubt your own voice. Healthy relationships are built on mutual influence, not on one person absorbing the other's entire being. Set boundaries, consciously and unapologetically. Celebrate your uniqueness, even if it means being less available for imitation. If you notice someone harvesting your identity, speak up with compassion but firmness. I love that we share so much, but I need space to be myself, too. Watch how they respond. If they become defensive, dismissive, or manipulative, it's a sign that the connection is more about possession than partnership. And most of all, remember this. You are not hollow. You are not empty, even if someone has tried to carve you out. The act of reclaiming yourself, your words, your passions, your colors, can be a powerful ritual. Try new things, take risks, rediscover the edges of your own creativity. Surround yourself with people who honor your individuality, who are inspired by you, but never feel entitled to your blueprint. You own your voice, you own your style, you own your story. And no matter who tries to harvest your identity, the roots of who you are run deeper than anyone can reach. The silent verdict. There is a kind of punishment so subtle, so devastating, it leaves no visible mark. No angry words, no accusations, no arguments. Instead, there is only a heavy growing silence where love once lived. One day you wake up and feel a shift, so slight you almost miss it. A message left unread, a coldness in the air, a glance that avoids your eyes. No one tells you what you did wrong. No one gives you a chance to explain. You are simply shut out. This is the silent verdict, the act of withdrawing affection and connection without a word, leaving you stranded in an invisible trial where the judge has already left the room. It's a slow unraveling. You replay every conversation, searching for the moment things changed. Was it something you said? Something you forgot to do? You try to recall every detail, combing through your own memory for evidence of guilt you don't understand. You reach out, but your words fall into the void. Calls go unanswered. Messages are met with monosyllables or left in limbo. The warmth that once anchored you turns into a cold, gray mist. The most agonizing part isn't the silence itself. It's what happens inside you in response to it. Human beings crave closure. We need to know why we've been cast out, what rule we broke, what line we crossed. But with the silent verdict, there is no explanation. Only withdrawal, only absence. And so, in the vacuum left behind, your mind spins new stories. Maybe I'm too needy. Maybe I was annoying. Maybe I'm just not good enough. The silence becomes a mirror that reflects your deepest insecurities back at you, amplifying them until you're convinced the worst must be true. This kind of withdrawal can happen in any relationship. In romance, it's the partner who pulls away and gives you the cold shoulder, all without a word. In friendship, it's the sudden distance, the plans that keep getting canceled, the laughter that dries up. In families, it's the parent who becomes unreachable, the sibling who turns distant, the child who locks you out. It happens at work, too. A boss who stops giving you feedback. A colleague who goes from friendly to icy with no explanation. The common thread is always the same. Silence where there should have been dialogue. Withdrawal where there should have been connection. The cruelty of the silent verdict is that it turns the victim into both detective and defendant. You are forced to search for clues and put yourself on trial, trying to defend against an accusation that is never spoken. The uncertainty gnaws at you. Every unanswered message becomes evidence of your failure. Every minute of silence becomes another tally in the column of your self-doubt. You become desperate for even a single word, a confirmation, an accusation, even a fight, anything to break the spell and let you know what's real. This technique is a powerful form of emotional control. Some people wield it intentionally, knowing that silence can be more punishing than confrontation. Others do it unconsciously, withdrawing into themselves when they feel upset, anxious, or overwhelmed. But the impact is always profound. The person on the receiving end is left to wander an endless maze of self-blame, unable to rest, unable to heal. You might try everything to win them back. You apologize for things you're not sure you did. You become hypervigilant, watching every word, every gesture, terrified of making things worse. You start to accept less and less, just for a scrap of warmth. A text, a half smile, a reply that isn't completely empty. Your world shrinks down to the hope that one day, the silence will break and everything will return to normal. In the process, you lose sight of your own needs, your own dignity, your own truth. But here's what's so insidious. The silent verdict is never about justice or growth or helping you become better. It's about power. The one who withholds connection holds all the cards. You're trapped in uncertainty, desperate for answers only they can give, and they become the only source of relief from the pain they caused. It's an invisible leash, tightening every time you blame yourself for a crime you can't name. If you find yourself trapped in this kind of silence, pause and breathe. Remind yourself, someone who loves you, truly loves you, will not make you beg for communication or punish you with absence. Healthy relationships face pain with conversation, not with silence. If someone withdraws without explanation and leaves you guessing at your own guilt, it's not your job to solve the riddle or earn your way back. Your worth is not measured by how well you tolerate the cold. The only way out is through truth, with yourself, and, if possible, with them. Ask for clarity once, directly. If you are met with more silence, recognize that the verdict was never really about you. Step back. Reclaim your voice. Connect with people who are willing to have uncomfortable conversations, who offer words instead of walls, who value dialogue over distance. The silent verdict hurts because it attacks our deepest fear, that love is conditional, that we are one mistake away from exile. But the real verdict, the one you can give yourself, is that you deserve connection built on communication, not punishment by silence. The next time the air grows cold and the words run out, remember, your value is not determined by the sound of someone else's silence. The psychic invasion. There is a form of manipulation so insidious, so invisible, that it can make you question the very core of your own mind. It's called the psychic invasion. You've probably felt its presence at least once in your life. A person who insists they can see right through you, who interprets your every word and action as if they have a key to your hidden soul. But the real danger isn't that they can read your mind. It's that, after enough time, you'll start to hand them the key yourself. It always begins quietly, with someone who claims to just know how you really feel, what you truly want, or why you act the way you do. Sometimes they're a parent, sometimes a partner, sometimes a teacher or a friend. You're only doing this to get attention, they might say, when you voice a need or a boundary, or you don't actually care about this project, you're just afraid of failing. They cloak their words in the language of insight, concern, even love. But underneath is a chilling certainty. Your self-understanding is not just incomplete, it's fundamentally unreliable. They alone can interpret your real motives. At first, you protest. You say, "That's not what I meant," or, "No, I really do care about this." But the psychic invader is relentless. They shake their head gently, smile knowingly, act as if your denial is only more proof of your supposed blindness. They point to patterns, real or imagined, to convince you that your stated motives are just the surface. Don't you see? You always do this when you're anxious. I know you better than you know yourself. The longer this continues, the less sure you become of your own thoughts. You start to second-guess even the simplest emotions. Did you really say no because you were tired, or because you secretly wanted to punish them? Did you really choose that job because you loved it, or were you running from something else? The narrative is slowly rewritten until you become a stranger to your own inner world. This is the true genius of the psychic invasion. It does not need to be loud or aggressive. In fact, it works best when it is subtle, wrapped in the language of intimacy and care. It feels like a gift at first, someone who pays such close attention to you, who wants to understand what makes you tick. But gradually, the lines blur. You start to doubt your right to your own motives. You become afraid to express yourself, convinced that whatever you say will be twisted into something darker, pettier, or more selfish than you intended. Let's see how this looks in everyday life. Imagine a daughter who tries to talk to her mother about a tough decision, maybe leaving a job or ending a friendship. The mother sighs and says, "You always do this when you want people to feel sorry for you. You're not really unhappy. You just crave drama." The daughter feels a flash of anger, then doubt. Was it true? Had she invented her own feelings just to gain sympathy? Or think of a romantic partner who claims to know you inside and out. I know you better than you know yourself. You're pretending you're not jealous, but I can see right through you. At first, it feels romantic, soulmate-level understanding. But after a while, it feels like surveillance. Your inner life becomes a crime scene, every motive suspect, every action interrogated. In workplaces, the psychic invasion is used by bosses who read your ambitions, by coworkers who insist you're just trying to outshine them, by mentors who insist your doubts are just self-sabotage. You try to argue your perspective, but each protest is dismissed as denial or unconscious resistance. The end result is a kind of internal exile, a place where you're no longer allowed to trust your own mind. Why does this tactic work? Because humans are social creatures, and our sense of self is built through the feedback we get from others. We want to be known, to be seen. When someone close to us claims to see us more clearly than we see ourselves, it's intoxicating at first. We surrender, little by little, to their interpretation, especially if we've been taught to doubt ourselves by previous relationships, childhood experiences, or trauma. Eventually, you reach a point where you need their input just to understand your own feelings. You become dependent on their reading, unable to act or choose without checking what your motives really are, according to them. But the cost is immense. The psychic invasion breeds self-doubt, anxiety, even paranoia. You start to see your own emotions as unreliable, your own choices as questionable. You lose the freedom to be messy, ambiguous, imperfect. You start to live according to their version of you, a version that is always under their control. How do you escape? The first step is to notice when someone claims exclusive access to your inner world. Healthy relationships honor the mystery of being human. They allow for contradiction, for not knowing, for changing your mind. If someone insists that they always know your motives, especially when you protest, they are not connecting with you. They are colonizing you. Reclaiming your mind starts with radical self-trust, believing that you are allowed to define your motives, even if they change or make no sense to anyone but you. And if you find yourself hesitating, worrying that you're just in denial, remember, no one, not even the closest soul, can see every corner of your heart. The deepest self is not an open book, and it is not a crime to have secrets from everyone, including those who love you. Your motives are your own. Your inner world belongs to you. No psychic invader, no matter how convincing, has the right to claim it. Only you can decide what you think, what you feel, and what you truly want. And the moment you reclaim that right, the spell of the psychic invasion breaks. The only true expert on your mind is you. Magnetic helplessness. It always starts small. They ask for your help with something simple, a computer glitch, a ride across town, a task they could probably handle on their own. You step in, happy to help, feeling useful and appreciated. After all, what's kindness if not lending a hand? But soon, their requests become a pattern. Every time you turn around, there's a new favor, a fresh crisis, another problem that only you can solve. And each time you help, the gratitude is sweet, sometimes almost childlike, softening your boundaries and weaving you deeper into their life. What you don't realize at first is that you're being pulled into the orbit of magnetic helplessness, a force that draws you closer not by genuine weakness, but by the carefully crafted appearance of it. This is the trick. They feign helplessness, letting you believe that your skills, your patience, your reliability are the only things keeping them afloat. They always forget how to log in, never quite manage to fill out that form, always end up confused about the bills, the schedule, the smallest practicalities. And because you care, because you pride yourself on being capable and kind, you step in again and again. It feels good to be needed, to have someone who depends on you, whose world seems to wobble without your steady hand. But bit by bit, what started as compassion becomes a trap, and you find yourself bound to their dependency by invisible cords of obligation. At first, it's hard to see the manipulation. Most of us want to help. We're taught that kindness means showing up for others, that loyalty means never leaving someone stranded. You tell yourself you're just being a good person, a reliable friend, a loving partner. But soon you notice you're caring more than your share, not just occasionally, but all the time. When you try to teach them how to do something on their own, they act confused, frustrated, even a little hurt. They sigh and say, "I'll never figure this out," or "You're so much better at this than me." The subtext is clear. Why bother learning when you're always there to fix it? This isn't real helplessness. It's a strategy, a subtle way to keep you close, to ensure your attention never drifts too far away. Every problem becomes your problem. Every need becomes your responsibility. They cast themselves as the lost child, the overwhelmed adult, the one who just can't cope without you. And the more you give, the more you lose sight of your own boundaries. You're always on call, always adjusting your life to their emergencies, always a little too tired to do the things you need for yourself. What's most insidious is how this dynamic rewires your sense of self. You start to believe your worth is tied to their well-being, that your value comes from being indispensable. Their dependency becomes a badge of honor. You are the savior, the rock, the only one who can make things right. But deep down, there's a growing exhaustion, a sense that you're trapped in a relationship that only works as long as you keep giving. And if you ever pull back, even a little, the guilt is overwhelming. They might not say it out loud, but their disappointment, their sudden silence, their anxious texts all communicate the same thing. You can't leave. They need you too much. In families, this dynamic is especially common. The adult child who still can't manage their finances, the parent who refuses to learn basic technology, the sibling who always needs rescuing from self-made disasters. In romantic relationships, it's the partner who seems utterly lost without you, whose inability to cope becomes your daily chore. Even at work, you might find yourself paired with a colleague who always seems confused, whose incompetence is so chronic that you end up doing their share just to keep things running. Over time, magnetic helplessness drains you. Your empathy, your time, your energy are siphoned away. The satisfaction of being needed is replaced by resentment, fatigue, and a creeping sense of being used. Yet the bond remains magnetic because walking away feels like abandonment. You worry about what will happen to them if you stop helping. You fear you'll be judged as heartless or cruel. So you stay, patching their world, quietly breaking apart your own. But real compassion requires boundaries. True kindness doesn't mean sacrificing your life to maintain someone else's learned helplessness. It means encouraging independence, supporting growth, and refusing to let guilt dictate your choices. The only way out is to recognize the pattern, to see that their dependency is not a measure of your value, but a cage built of obligation. You deserve relationships where help is a gift, not a requirement, where your worth isn't measured by how many fires you put out, but by who you are. When someone feigns helplessness to keep you close, remember, your kindness is powerful, but it should never be a leash. You are allowed to step back, to let others learn, to reclaim your time and your peace. The world is full of people who truly need help. Save your energy for those who want to grow, not for those who keep you bound by the gravity of their feigned helplessness. The nostalgia bait. You're sitting across from someone you used to be close to. Maybe a friend, maybe a lover, maybe even a parent. Things haven't been good for a long time. Maybe there's resentment in the air, maybe just the chill of growing distance. And then, almost magically, they start reminiscing. Remember those nights when we laughed until sunrise? Remember how happy we were back when everything was simple? Their eyes are soft, their voice is velvet, and suddenly you're swimming in memories, smiles, warmth, the golden glow of some perfect past. The pain between you melts a little. You want to believe those days can return. You want to believe they ever truly existed. This is the spell of nostalgia bait, a psychological trick so subtle, so intoxicating, that you can lose years to its mirage. It doesn't matter if the memories are true, only that they feel true. That's the genius and the cruelty of nostalgia. Your mind isn't a tape recorder. Every time you recall the past, you rewrite it, smoothing out the rough edges, blurring the arguments, amplifying the laughter. When someone wants to pull you back into their orbit, they don't remind you of the hard days. They remind you of the sunshine, the magic, the wild possibility that maybe, just maybe, things could be that good again. If only you try a little harder, give them another chance, overlook all you know now. But what if those better times were never as beautiful as they now claim? What if the glow was painted by distance, by longing, by loneliness? Not reality, nostalgia. Bait works precisely because it hijacks your emotions, bypasses your logic, and delivers a hit of longing so powerful you forget the reasons you walked away in the first place. Let's say you were in a relationship marked by neglect, indifference, or even cruelty. Years later, that person texts you out of nowhere. They send a photo from some trip you took, a blurry sunset over some distant city, and suddenly your heart aches. "Wasn't that the best day?" they write, and for a second, you agree. You forget the silence after the fight that night, the way you cried alone in the bathroom. Your brain, craving connection, fills in the blanks with hope. It's not just a memory, it's a lure. Or maybe it's a friend who left you behind when it mattered most, but now they're lonely and need your warmth. Remember how we used to be inseparable? Nobody made me laugh like you did. For a moment, the pain of the fallout vanishes, and you're transported to nights in the back seat of some car, the two of you against the world. You crave the feeling, not the reality. You crave the idea of who you were together, not who you actually became. The trap is deep because nostalgia isn't just a feeling, it's a distortion. Psychologists have shown that memory is reconstructive. When we're nostalgic, our brains actually alter the emotional tone of the past, especially when prompted by someone else. The more often you revisit a memory, the more it shifts, until you're clinging to a version of history that comforts your longing, not your truth. For the one doing the baiting, this tactic is powerful. It's how toxic relationships restart their cycle. It's how manipulative parents reassert control. It's how unreliable friends find their way back into your trust. By conjuring a shared golden age, they dissolve your boundaries and make you question your own judgment. Maybe I was too hard on them. Maybe things really were better than I thought. Maybe we could go back. But there is no back. The moments you crave never existed as you recall. The good was always mixed with the bad, and the distance of time has scrubbed the details clean. But here's what makes the nostalgia bait so heartbreaking. It doesn't just change how you see them. It changes how you see yourself. You start to yearn for the person you thought you were, carefree, beloved, unburdened. You want to become that version again, and you believe, for a heartbeat, that this relationship is the key. You forget that nostalgia is a feeling about the present, not the past. You miss who you wish you'd been, not who you really were. If you've ever felt the pull of this trap, you know how strong it is. You find yourself replying to texts you swore you'd ignore, agreeing to meet for coffee, telling yourself it's just a conversation, not a return. But deep down, your heart is hoping to step back into the warmth of a memory, even though you know it's only smoke. To break free, you must anchor yourself in reality. Let yourself remember the good times, but don't let anyone use them as bait. Remember why things changed, why you left, why it hurt. Acknowledge the longing without surrendering to it. Tell yourself the truth. It's okay to mourn a past that never really was, but you owe yourself a future built on reality, not fantasy. The greatest risk of nostalgia bait isn't falling back into old patterns. It's losing yourself in a version of history that never existed. It's living for a mirage instead of a life. You deserve more than that. You deserve a present and a future where the warmth is real, the laughter is honest, and the memories you make aren't just a golden echo, but something solid you can finally call your own. The infection compliment. There's a kind of compliment that doesn't nourish, it infects. You don't notice it at first, because it arrives wrapped in sweetness. Someone says, "You're so smart," for someone your age. Or, "I really admire your work ethic," even if you sometimes take things too seriously. You hear, "You look great," when you actually make an effort. The words glow with approval on the surface, but beneath there's a shadow. It lingers long after the praise has faded, creeping into your thoughts, reshaping the way you see yourself. This is the infection compliment, the art of giving with one hand and taking away with the other. Why do these compliments sting so much deeper than an outright insult? Because they promise validation, but serve up uncertainty. You want to be proud of the good thing you've done, but there's always a catch, a qualifier, a condition, a veiled comparison. Instead of feeling lifted up, you become anxious, analyzing every word. Did they really mean what they said? Or was it just a polite disguise for criticism? Are you actually talented? Or only for someone in your position? Are you truly attractive? Or just when you try hard enough? Every compliment becomes a riddle, and the answer is always that you're not quite enough. The infection compliment thrives in relationships built on subtle power dynamics. It might come from a boss who wants to motivate you, but only if you stay slightly off balance. You're one of our most reliable employees when you're not distracted. It might come from a parent whose love is measured and transactional. "I'm proud of your grades, even though you're still not as consistent as your brother." It might come from a partner who needs to keep you a little insecure, so you'll always try harder to please. "You look amazing tonight. Why don't you dress up like this more often?" The praise is always infected by expectation, comparison, or doubt. Over time, these compliments train you to distrust yourself. You start to brace for the but in every good thing someone says. You learn to anticipate the poison hidden in the honey. This constant uncertainty does more than just erode your confidence. It creates a feedback loop of self-doubt. You hesitate to celebrate your achievements, second-guess your strengths, and eventually, you might even stop trying. Because no matter how hard you work, no matter how much you improve, there's always a silent warning attached. This praise is temporary, conditional, and can be withdrawn at any moment. Imagine being a child whose every accomplishment is followed by a reminder of what you still lack. Great job on the test. Let's see if you can keep it up next time. Or being a partner who gets affection only on days when you live up to shifting standards. I love how thoughtful you are, sometimes. You become hyper-aware of your flaws, shrinking every time you almost measure up, but never quite reach the finish line. The infection compliment is especially powerful because it keeps you chasing approval that's always just out of reach. Each time you do something well, you hope this will be the moment the praise is pure, but the pattern repeats. The more you chase, the more your sense of self becomes dependent on external validation, and the less you trust your own judgment. It's a form of psychological conditioning, turning you into your own harshest critic, long after the person delivering the infection has moved on. In the workplace, these infected compliments can shape entire careers. A manager says, "You have real leadership potential. If you can work on being less emotional, you work late nights, push yourself to be stoic, trying to earn the approval in full. But the finish line keeps moving, the standards keep shifting. You exhaust yourself, chasing an ideal that was never meant to be reached, only dangled as a means of control. And socially, infection compliments are used to keep people in line, to reinforce hierarchies, to maintain an invisible order. They appear in cliques, in schools, in online spaces. You're pretty cool for a nerd. You're funny when you're not being so intense. The message is always the same. Your acceptance is conditional, precarious, provisional. So, how do you fight the infection compliment? First, by naming it. When you recognize that a compliment is infected, you reclaim the power to decide how much it will affect you. You learn to separate the genuine praise from the qualifier, the truth from the manipulation. If someone says, "You're talented, but you could be better if you just..." Stop and hear only the first part. If there's a sting in their words, ask yourself, whose standards am I trying to meet, and why do I believe I have to keep earning acceptance that's never freely given? Second, remember that true compliments are unconditional. They aren't laced with warnings, comparisons, or hidden criticisms. Real praise doesn't leave you doubting yourself, looking over your shoulder, waiting for the catch. If you're surrounded by people who can only lift you up by also cutting you down, it's time to question why you give their words so much power. And finally, turn inward. Start recognizing your own achievements, your own strengths, your own value, without waiting for someone else's conditional approval. Affirm yourself, purely and honestly, until the infection starts to lose its hold. The next time you receive a compliment that feels like a warning, pause. Feel the sting, then let it go. Remember, the words that matter most are the ones you say to yourself, the ones that build, not erode, the ones that heal, not infect. The only acceptance you need is the one that lets you breathe freely, proud and unafraid, on your own terms. The Compass Distortion. It starts quietly, often with a story about loyalty. Maybe you're told that real friends stick together, no matter what, or that family means standing by each other, even when it hurts someone else. The words come wrapped in warmth, in trust, in the promise of unbreakable bonds. But beneath that, a shadow grows. You notice that their loyalty isn't just about support. It's about following their lead, even when the path twists into darkness. The Compass Distortion is this. When someone reshapes your sense of right and wrong, teaching you to call cruelty loyalty, and slowly, piece by piece, you become complicit in harm you never would have chosen on your own. At first, it feels like love. You're invited into the inner circle, the us against the world. Maybe it's a friend who says, "I need you to back me up, no matter what." Or a partner who insists, "If you really care, you'll take my side, even when I'm wrong." They test you with small things. A lie you're asked to support. A cold shoulder you're expected to join in giving someone. The request is so minor, the pressure so gentle, that refusing would feel like betrayal. You tell yourself, it's not a big deal, I'm just being supportive. But every concession is a stone laid in a new foundation, a new moral architecture built for someone else's comfort. Gradually, the demands escalate. You might witness them humiliating someone, then hear, if you're with me, you'll defend me. Or you're told to ignore another's pain because outsiders don't matter, only us. What was once unthinkable becomes routine. You start to rationalize your silence, your participation. If I say something, I'll lose them. If I step away, I'm abandoning my tribe. And so you stay, biting your tongue, suppressing guilt, because belonging is wired deep into your psyche, sometimes deeper than your own sense of right and wrong. Think of the office clique that bullies a new coworker. You're told, she's not one of us, she doesn't fit. If you object, you're risking isolation. So you laugh at the jokes, you let the gossip flow, all in the name of team spirit. Or picture a family that justifies cruelty to outsiders because family comes first. Maybe you witness them shutting out a relative for stepping out of line, and you're told, that's what loyalty means. You're either with us or against us. The group's approval is a drug, and questioning it becomes unthinkable. The Compass Distortion is powerful because it works on the most fundamental human need, to belong. We all want to be on the inside, to be trusted, to matter. Manipulators weaponize this need, framing their cruelty as a test of your loyalty. If you comply, you pass. If you resist, you're shamed, or worse, exiled. Over time, your internal compass doesn't just spin, it resets itself. The person or group becomes true north, and morality bends to their will. What's terrifying is how invisible this shift can be. You might look back on things you've said or done, harsh words, betrayals of your own values, and barely recognize yourself. You remember thinking, I would never do that. But in the moment, surrounded by pressure and conditional love, you did. That's the real cost. Not just what happens to others, but what happens to you. The part of yourself that once knew the difference between compassion and cruelty becomes muted, fuzzy, overridden by the need to stay connected. Why does this work so well? Because it targets shame and fear. You're not just afraid of losing the relationship. You're afraid of being called disloyal, of being the villain in someone else's story. The manipulator becomes judge and jury, redefining goodness to suit their agenda. Loyalty becomes a weapon, and you, without ever making a conscious decision, become an accomplice. But there are always moments, quiet and unsettling, when the truth surfaces. Maybe you see the look on someone's face, the person you helped hurt. Maybe you wake up at night, replaying a conversation, feeling sick with regret. Your conscience whispers, but the pressure to ignore it is immense. That's when you know the compass is broken. How do you reclaim it? First, recognize the pattern. Loyalty and love never require cruelty or silence in the face of harm. If standing by someone demands you hurt others, or yourself, that's not loyalty. That's manipulation. Reclaiming your moral compass means risking discomfort, risking the loss of belonging. It means learning to sit with guilt and grief, but choosing truth anyway. Start with small acts of resistance. Speak up, even if your voice shakes. Refuse to join the cruelty, even if it means standing alone. Real loyalty means holding others to a higher standard, even when they push back. It means being the friend, the partner, the family member who refuses to be anyone's weapon. The world is full of groups and people who will try to bend your compass for their comfort, their control, their power. But your sense of right and wrong is yours alone. Don't let anyone rewrite it. Loyalty without conscience is just complicity by another name. The bravest thing you can do, the thing that brings you home to yourself, is to refuse the distortion and walk your own true north, even when it leads you away from the crowd. Butterfly guilt effect. Some forms of psychological control are so delicate, so exquisitely disguised, that they masquerade as love or loyalty, when, in reality, they are subtle cages. The butterfly guilt effect is one of the most haunting of these. It begins where all growth begins, in your own transformation. The moment you start to change, become happier, braver, more independent, or more fulfilled, someone close to you suddenly seems hurt. You see it in their eyes, hear it in their sighs. Their sadness is quiet, but it hovers, heavy as storm clouds. You may recognize it in phrases like, I guess you don't need me anymore, or I just miss how things used to be. Sometimes it's only a glance, a shift in tone, a silence that wasn't there before. At first, you don't understand. Why does your happiness leave them so sad? Why does your new job, your new relationship, your new confidence feel like an act of betrayal? The butterfly guilt effect is not obvious. There is no argument, no direct confrontation, just a subtle, ever-present sense that your wings bruise their heart. This effect preys on your empathy. The people most vulnerable to it are those who care deeply about the feelings of others, who have been taught, consciously or unconsciously, that love means self-sacrifice. When you start to grow, the butterfly guilt effect convinces you that your evolution is a kind of violence, a ripple that wounds those you love. Maybe it's a parent whose identity was wrapped up in your dependency, and now, as you pull away, they seem lost, abandoned. Maybe it's a partner who mourns the old you, the one who doubted, who clung, who needed. Perhaps it's a friend who shrinks into sadness every time you celebrate a win, quietly reminding you how much they miss the way things were. At first, you try to comfort them. You dial down your joy, you play small, you reassure them, you try to prove that nothing has really changed. You apologize for your opportunities. You shrink yourself, just a little, to keep the peace. This shrinking can become habitual, an automatic reflex. You hesitate to share good news. You question whether your dreams are too much. You defer decisions until you know how they'll react. Over time, you lose the sense of who you might have become had their pain not been the backdrop to your every leap forward. The butterfly guilt effect is not just a side effect of change. It is a strategy, often unconscious, by which others keep you close, dependent, familiar. For some, your growth is a mirror to their own stuckness. Watching you become more than you were exposes the places where they have not dared to grow, and rather than face that discomfort, they recast your evolution as a kind of injury. You become the villain in their quiet narrative. You changed, and I suffered. Let's make this real. Picture a daughter who is the first in her family to go to university. Her mother, who sacrificed everything to give her that chance, suddenly seems distant, moody, even resentful. The daughter feels caught, her pride in her achievements always tinged with sorrow. Or think of a young man who begins to prioritize his mental health, setting boundaries for the first time with friends who are used to his constant availability. You've changed, they say, their voices heavy with disappointment. He feels guilty, as if healing himself is a kind of betrayal. Or consider a partner who, after years of relying on you for emotional support, begins to sulk and withdraw when you finally start to focus on your own dreams. You see their pain, so you stall your ambitions, telling yourself that love means never making someone else uncomfortable. The butterfly guilt effect has you believing that your wings are knives. This guilt is sticky, persistent, and hard to name. It's reinforced by culture, by stories about loyalty and sacrifice, by families that treat change as abandonment. You internalize it until you can't tell where their pain ends and your responsibility begins. Your growth becomes a negotiation. How much can you change before you are too different to be loved? But here is the truth hidden beneath the guilt. Healthy love does not shrink in the face of your transformation. Real friends, real partners, real family want you to grow, even if it scares them. They celebrate your expansion, even when it means you might leave, might outgrow, might become something unfamiliar. When you find yourself shrinking to keep someone else comfortable, you are not honoring love. You are honoring their control, even if they do not intend it that way. The butterfly guilt effect can be broken, but only by radical self-compassion. You have a right to change, to become more than you were, to seek joy that is not dependent on someone else's approval. When guilt comes, pause and ask, whose pain is this? Is it truly mine? Am I allowed to grow, even if it unsettles someone I love? And if you feel the urge to hide your success, ask why. Growth is not violence. Your wings are not weapons. Your happiness is not betrayal. Those who truly love you may struggle at first, but they will adjust. They will learn to love the new you, or they will fall away, making room for people who can. Your life is not a debt owed to anyone's comfort. The butterfly guilt effect is only powerful when it remains unnamed. The moment you see it for what it is, the spell begins to break. You step into the fullness of who you are becoming, unapologetic, radiant, and free. You learn, at last, that the greatest act of love is not shrinking for others, but giving them the courage to grow alongside you, or letting them watch you fly. The Boundary Mirage. You draw your lines carefully, thinking you've made yourself clear. You explain what you're comfortable with, what you can't tolerate, what you need to feel safe. At first, they nod and agree. Almost enthusiastically, they talk about how important boundaries are, how much they admire your self-respect. For a while, everything is smooth. You feel relieved, even proud, that you found someone who truly gets it. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, something shifts. They inch a little closer to your line, not leaping across, just hovering, their toes nudging the edge. A favor you didn't want to grant, a joke you'd already said you don't like, a request you'd made not to be disturbed after a certain hour. Nothing dramatic, just small slips, tiny exceptions. Each time, you hesitate. Is it worth making a scene? You don't want to seem rigid, unkind, or too sensitive. So, you let it slide. This is the Boundary Mirage, and it is one of the most subtle and disorienting forms of manipulation. On the surface, your limits are being respected. But in reality, you're being tested, over and over, in increments so tiny, they're almost invisible. Each step is just close enough to make you uncomfortable, but just small enough that if you object, you feel petty. You tell yourself, maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe it's not a big deal. So the line blurs, then fades, until your boundaries exist only as a mirage, visible from afar, but dissolving when pressed. It's in the way a friend borrows something and returns it just a little late, just a little worse for wear. You say nothing because it feels minor. Next time, it's a bigger ask, a small loan, an inconvenient favor, a last-minute demand. You hesitate, but again, you don't want to be difficult. Or it's a partner who insists they understand your need for alone time, but just this once shows up unannounced or calls past midnight. At first, it's easy to forgive. After all, love is about flexibility, right? But soon, the exceptions are the new normal, and your sanctuary shrinks to a memory. The most dangerous thing about the Boundary Mirage is how reasonable it seems. Each violation is coated in charm, wrapped in apologies or laughter. I know you said not to, but I just missed you so much. I'm sorry, I lost track of time. Promise it won't happen again. You want to believe them because believing is easier than confrontation, and they count on that hope, gently eroding your confidence in your own limits. In families, the Boundary Mirage often appears as tradition. This is how we've always done it. Or as guilt. After everything I've done for you, can't you make this one exception? In workplaces, it's the boss who asks you to stay late just this once, then again and again, until overtime is expected, and refusal seems selfish. You find yourself weighed down by 1,000 tiny trespasses, none big enough to justify a fight, but together, heavy as lead. Eventually, you start to doubt your own judgment. You become reluctant to state your needs, embarrassed to restate limits you've already set. You worry about being seen as unreasonable, high maintenance, or cold. The fear of conflict keeps you silent, and the silence becomes permission for more boundary pushing. By the time you realize what's happened, your boundaries have been so thoroughly dissolved that you're not even sure where they ever were. It's easy to blame yourself. You tell yourself you should have been firmer, less forgiving, more assertive. But the truth is, no one should have to guard their boundaries with a sword. Respect is not supposed to be conditional or easily revoked. When someone only honors your limits in public but quietly undermines them in private, when their apologies come more easily than their restraint, you're not being respected. You're being managed. The way out starts with naming the pattern. Notice the small trespasses, the steady drift away from your comfort zone. If a boundary is worth setting, it's worth defending, even against minor infractions. You are not petty for objecting. You are protecting the dignity of your needs. Hold your line, even when the world says it's not a big deal, because the smallest cracks, left unchecked, become the largest wounds. You deserve relationships where your boundaries are honored in both word and deed, where no means no and not okay is taken seriously the first time. When someone makes you feel small for defending yourself, remember, respect is never a mirage. It's the ground you stand on, not a trick of the light. The vacuum presence. Imagine this. When they're in the room, everything feels vivid. Colors sharpen, energy buzzes, the world feels fuller. Their attention is a spotlight, and you blossom under its glow. Every word feels charged, every joke lands, every glance is a signal that you matter. But when they leave, whether for hours, days, or longer, a silent emptiness creeps in. It's not loneliness in the ordinary sense. It's something deeper, as if your identity itself goes dim, waiting for them to return. You feel half-formed, inert, suspended in a holding pattern. This is the vacuum presence, a psychological phenomenon where another person becomes the axis around which your sense of self spins, so completely that, in their absence, you feel like you barely exist at all. You may not notice it at first. After all, it's normal to miss people you care about, but this is different from longing or love. This is an existential pause. You find yourself unable to enjoy your hobbies, uncertain about your opinions, even hesitant to make decisions without their input. You hesitate to start a new show, to visit a favorite place, or to even laugh at something funny unless they're there to see it. Life without their gaze feels strangely two-dimensional, like you're acting out the motions of someone else's life. How does this happen? It often starts with someone who knows how to make their presence intoxicating. Their focus is laser sharp, their validation overwhelming. They notice your quirks, laugh at your jokes, shower you with attention and curiosity. For a while, it feels like the world is finally seeing you. Maybe you've never felt so alive. Maybe you've never felt so special. But then, their attention is withdrawn, sometimes suddenly, sometimes subtly. They're busy, distracted, less available. They don't answer your texts as quickly, or their words lose warmth. It's in these silences that you notice the emptiness most sharply. You start questioning yourself. Was I interesting without them? Did I ever have opinions before they came along? Your mind races, replaying every interaction, searching for ways to reignite their focus, to fill the vacuum. The trap deepens with every cycle. The more you feel empty without them, the more you seek their presence. You find yourself changing plans, rearranging your day, even muting your own needs just to maximize time in their orbit. You may become anxious, clingy, desperate for any sign of attention. You start to believe that your value, your vibrancy, your sense of self only exists when illuminated by their gaze. But the emptiness is not a reflection of your worth. It's a symptom of a relationship that has drained you of autonomy, leaving you dependent on another person's presence for meaning. Sometimes, the person at the center of this vacuum isn't malicious. They might simply be charismatic, the kind of person who draws others in like gravity. But often, they're aware of the dynamic, and they use it to their advantage. By controlling their attention, they control your sense of reality. Your identity becomes conditional, waiting in storage until their spotlight returns. This dynamic is common in toxic relationships, especially with narcissists. They create a roller coaster of intensity and withdrawal, known as love bombing and devaluation, training your brain to crave their presence like a drug. When they're gone, you're left in withdrawal, convinced you can't be whole without them. But the truth is, the emptiness was engineered. It was built, piece by piece, as you gave up bits of yourself for another person's validation. There are warning signs. You start to avoid doing things alone, even things you once loved. You hesitate to share opinions that differ from theirs. You become more anxious, more self-critical, less willing to be seen on your own terms. You might lose track of old friends, old passions, even old dreams. Your life begins to orbit a single presence, and when that presence is gone, the silence is deafening. So, how do you break free? It starts with reclaiming the parts of you that were always yours. Spend time alone, not in waiting, but in rediscovery. Do things just for yourself, even if they feel flat at first. Write, create, wander, reconnect with people who knew you before the vacuum. Challenge yourself to make decisions without waiting for someone else's reaction. Notice the anxiety, but don't run from it. Let it teach you where you've lost touch with yourself. And most importantly, remember, your worth is not borrowed. You do not need to be witnessed to be real. The richness you feel in another's gaze is a reflection of the beauty and depth you already possess. When someone leaves you feeling hollow in their absence, it's not a sign of love. It's a warning that you've handed over the keys to your identity. The presence of another can add to your life, but it should never be the source of your existence. You are whole, even in the quiet, even in the dark, even when no one else is watching. Step out of the vacuum. Stand in your own light, and let your identity pulse, bold and unpaused, in the world, no matter who comes or goes. The Selective Spotlight. There's a certain chill that enters the room when your name comes up in conversation. Not because you've done something wrong, but because someone you trust is about to shine a light on your tiniest mistake. Maybe it's your partner who jokes about how you always forget your keys, or a colleague who brings up that one typo in front of the whole team. Laughter ripples across the room. You smile, embarrassed, and swallow the sting. Later, in private, the same person is full of gentle reassurance. You know, I only tease because I care. You're actually amazing. This is the selective spotlight, an emotional tactic as old as insecurity itself, designed to keep you feeling both exposed and dependent. It's easy to dismiss these public criticisms as harmless, even affectionate. But the truth is, there's nothing accidental about the selective spotlight. It's a careful performance, one that keeps you small when others are watching, but just secure enough in private that you don't leave. The balance is so subtle, you barely notice it happening, until your confidence starts to shrink, until you hesitate before speaking, until you start bracing for the next joke that will be at your expense. Why does this work so well? Because public embarrassment triggers a primal fear, the fear of being judged, excluded, or shamed by the group. The selective spotlight leverages this fear by making you feel exposed in moments when you're most vulnerable. It might be as simple as a sarcastic comment about your cooking in front of friends, or as pointed as a manager calling out a minor mistake during a meeting. The intention is rarely to help you grow or learn. Instead, it's to signal to everyone, including you, that you should stay in your place. But the story doesn't end there. What makes the selective spotlight so effective, so insidious, is the way it's paired with private praise. After the meeting, after the party, the person who humiliated you is all warmth and softness. They might apologize quietly or give you just enough encouragement that you start to doubt your own anger. Don't take it personally. You know how much I respect you. I just want you to lighten up. These words are a lifeline. They make you feel chosen, understood, almost special. And so, the cycle continues. Over time, this dynamic breeds a strange kind of dependence. You become conditioned to accept public criticism as the price for private affection. You learn to suppress your discomfort, to laugh at your own expense, to anticipate the next moment you'll be the punchline. The line between affection and humiliation blurs until you start questioning your own reactions. Maybe you're just sensitive. Maybe you should be grateful for the attention at all. Think about how this shows up in families, where a parent mocks a child's quirks at a family gathering, then offers comfort behind closed doors. Or in friendships, where one person always finds a way to turn your vulnerabilities into entertainment, only to shower you with loyalty when you're alone. Or in the workplace, where a manager's public jokes are smoothed over with private compliments and promises of future opportunity. In every case, the pattern is the same. Diminish in public, soothe in private, repeat. The damage of the selective spotlight is real. It keeps you off balance, unsure of your place. It can erode self-esteem until you start hiding your true self, second-guessing every move. You might even internalize the criticism, shrinking your own dreams and voice to avoid the next round of exposure. You become easy to manage, easy to keep around. Not because you feel good, but because you're grateful for the crumbs of private reassurance. So, why do people do this? Sometimes it's about control. Keeping someone small in public protects the person in power from competition, resentment, or challenge. Sometimes it's about insecurity, the need to feel superior in front of others. Sometimes it's simply a learned pattern, passed down through families or cultures that treat humiliation as affection. But no matter the reason, the effect is always the same. The spotlight keeps you small. The only way to escape is to notice the pattern and refuse to play along. When you feel the sting of public criticism, pause. Ask yourself, does this help me grow, or does it just keep me dependent? Are the private compliments enough to make up for the public shaming? Would I ever treat someone I love the same way? The answer is always found in how you feel when the laughter fades and the lights go out. If you feel less than, if you feel small, then the affection is just another part of the act. Healthy love and true respect don't require you to be the punchline. They don't shrink you in the spotlight only to rescue you in the dark. They celebrate your strengths in every room and help you grow through honest, private feedback, not public humiliation. The next time the selective spotlight finds you, let it pass you by. Remember your worth, your voice, your right to shine in your own light. Not just when the audience has gone home, but always. Because you deserve to be seen fully, celebrated wholly, and never made small for someone else's comfort. The Crisis Summoner. Some people enter your life like storm clouds, their presence always accompanied by thunder in the distance, a sense that trouble is brewing, even on clear days. With them, ordinary life is never enough. There's always a new emergency, a fresh disaster, a crisis that needs immediate attention. Yet, if you pay close attention, you'll notice a strange pattern. The chaos doesn't come from nowhere. Again and again, the source is the same person who later sweeps in, arms wide, promising to fix everything. This is the signature move of the Crisis Summoner, someone who conjures drama and destruction, then makes themselves indispensable as the only one who can rescue you. It starts with subtle sabotage. Maybe your plans are mysteriously derailed at the last minute, flights canceled, appointments forgotten, relationships soured by rumors or misunderstandings. The Crisis Summoner is always nearby, sometimes offering help, sometimes simply observing as things unravel. At first, you might thank them for their support. "I don't know what I'd do without you," you say, not realizing the trap that's being set. Then, as the pattern repeats, you notice their uncanny ability to be present at just the right moment. When you're overwhelmed and vulnerable, they arrive with answers and solutions, acting as your savior. But their rescue always comes with a price, one that isn't obvious until much later. Each act of salvation makes you a little more dependent, a little less certain of your own strength. You begin to trust your Crisis Summoner more than yourself, because chaos has become your new normal, and they are always at the center of it. The drama never ends. Maybe your car breaks down for the third time in a month, and it's your Crisis Summoner who knows just the mechanic to call. Maybe you find yourself feuding with friends over a rumor that only they seem to know the real story behind. Or perhaps they encourage impulsive decisions, quitting a job, moving to a new city, only to step in later and offer to help pick up the pieces. At first, it feels like bad luck, but gradually you sense a chilling design. The one who solves your problems is the one quietly causing them. This isn't just about seeking attention. For the Crisis Summoner, control is the ultimate prize. By keeping you in a constant state of emergency, they ensure you don't have the time, energy, or clarity to question their motives. You're so busy surviving that you can't see the strings being pulled behind the scenes. Every crisis makes you more grateful, more loyal, more convinced that you need them. Your world shrinks to the size of their approval. The psychological manipulation is profound. When life is a string of disasters, your sense of self erodes. You stop trusting your instincts. You stop making plans because plans never work out anyway. You begin to believe that you're helpless, unlucky, or incompetent. Unless the Crisis Summoner is there to guide you. They become the architect of your fate, your only steady anchor in a turbulent sea. Why do they do it? Some crave attention, needing to be the center of every story. Others feed on the power that comes from your dependence, the quiet thrill of being needed, admired, or even worshipped for their ability to rescue. For many, it's a pattern learned early, a way to guarantee loyalty, to build relationships based on need, not mutual respect. Think of the parent who always rescues their child from disasters, but the disasters seem to follow them everywhere, or the partner whose love feels like a lifeline, even as your life falls apart around them. Or the boss who creates last-minute crises at work, only to solve them in dramatic fashion, making sure you know who to thank. The message is always the same. You'd be lost without me. The cost? Your independence, your confidence, your ability to see a future outside the storm. The world feels dangerous, unpredictable, and the only safe harbor is the person holding the umbrella, the very one who called down the rain. How do you escape a Crisis Summoner? It starts with noticing the pattern. When the same person is always at the epicenter of your problems and your rescues, ask yourself who benefits from the chaos. Start keeping track of the crises, when, how, and who's always there. Quietly rebuild your network of support. Reach out to friends, family, professionals who can offer perspective without an agenda. Relearn the art of calm, of routine, of solving small problems on your own. Most importantly, trust yourself. You are not helpless, unlucky, or broken. You are simply caught in someone else's storm. The Crisis Summoner wants you to forget that life can be peaceful, that you can be strong and capable without their intervention. But you can break free. Refuse to play the game where drama is currency and dependence is love. Step out from under the storm they create and discover the power to build your own calm, a life where crisis is the exception, not the rule, and rescue is a rare gift, not a chain. The reflection override. Some forms of control are so quiet, so expertly disguised, that you barely notice them tightening around your life until one day you look in the mirror and cannot remember who you were before. The reflection override is this kind of manipulation, subtle, persistent, and deeply corrosive. It doesn't attack you head-on, it seeps into your bones, warping your sense of worth, eroding your confidence grain by grain until you become a ghost of your former self, haunted by gratitude for crumbs. It usually begins with tiny signals, so easily mistaken for truth or even kindness. A casual remark about your appearance. You look nice, but that color isn't really you. A playful jab at your intelligence. Of course you forgot. Details aren't your strong suit. Sometimes it's faint praise, a compliment buried under layers of criticism. I'm surprised you pulled that off. I didn't think you'd manage it. Or it's more direct. No one else would put up with you like I do. You're lucky I'm so patient. You laugh, you brush it off, you try to prove them wrong, but each time a seed is planted, every comment, every eye roll, every sigh carries the message. You are barely enough. The reflection override works over time, not with violence, but with relentless repetition. The person wielding it might be a partner, a parent, a friend, or a boss, someone whose approval means the world to you. At first, you might argue, defend yourself, even feel anger. But the human mind is fragile in its need for connection. When your reality is contradicted again and again by someone you trust, something inside you starts to shift. You stop questioning them. You start questioning yourself. This manipulation thrives on a slow, systematic replacement of your self-perception. Your strengths become flaws. Your quirks become embarrassments. Your ambitions become delusions. And every success is recast as luck, or worse, an accident that wouldn't have happened without their guidance. You only did well because I helped you. You're not as attractive as you think. Don't get cocky. Most people find you difficult, but I put up with it because I care. Each statement is designed to make you grateful for mere acceptance, to shrink your vision of what is possible for you. Over months or years, you begin to internalize their voice. You rehearse their criticisms before you even speak or act. You apologize for taking up space, for having needs, for wanting more. You turn down opportunities because you believe you're not qualified, not smart enough, not deserving. You fear losing them, convinced no one else would tolerate your supposed faults. In public, you might appear successful or even confident, but privately you carry the weight of their distorted reflection. You find yourself thinking, I'm lucky they put up with me at all. Let's look at how this plays out. Imagine a young woman in a relationship where her partner constantly points out her flaws. Her laughter is too loud. Her hobbies are childish. Her opinions are naive. Whenever she pushes back, he accuses her of being sensitive or ungrateful. Over time, she grows quieter, stops sharing her interests, questions her worth. She believes at her core that she is difficult to love. Or consider a workplace where a boss only ever recognizes your mistakes, minimizing your achievements, reminding you at every turn that others could easily replace you. You work harder, accept less, and remain paralyzed by the fear of being exposed as a fraud. The reflection override is particularly cruel because it turns your longing for love or belonging into a tool of self-erasure. The person manipulating you does not have to control you with rules or threats. They only have to control the lens through which you see yourself. If they can make you believe you're lucky to have them, they don't need to do anything else. You'll do the rest, doubting, apologizing, shrinking, accepting less than you deserve. This is not just a personal tragedy. It's a common story, echoed in abusive relationships, toxic families, manipulative friendships, and exploitative workplaces. The tools are always the same: relentless criticism, the undermining of confidence, the reframing of support as charity, and the replacement of your own self-appraisal with theirs. Even the smallest victories are explained away or credited to their influence. When you internalize this narrative, your freedom is replaced by dependence, your light by shadow. But there is a way out, and it begins with recognizing the reflection override for what it is: a distortion, not reality. Start by remembering who you were before their voice filled your head. Recall moments when you felt pride, when your laughter was natural, when your dreams belonged to you. Reach for the memories of people who saw your worth without needing to diminish you first. Notice how often you apologize for existing, how quickly you minimize your own needs, how easily you believe you're not enough. Healing from the reflection override requires new mirrors, people who reflect back your strength, your joy, your possibility. Sometimes, it requires being your own mirror, reclaiming your voice and naming your value out loud. It means understanding that tolerance is not love, that acceptance is not a privilege you must earn, and that you deserve respect simply because you exist. If you find yourself thinking you're lucky to be tolerated, pause and ask, who taught me this? Whose voice is this in my mind? The truth is, you are not hard to love, not hard to befriend, not difficult to appreciate. The only thing wrong was the reflection you were given. Step away from those who need you small to feel big. Find people who celebrate you, not just put up with you. And most of all, look in the mirror and remember, you were never lucky to be tolerated. You were always worthy of being loved. The Sympathy Hoard. There are people who never seem to run out of problems. Every conversation circles back to their pain, their losses, their endless stream of misfortunes. You listen, you care, you reassure again and again, pouring compassion into every call, every message, every late-night emergency. At first, you feel honored to be their confidant, trusted with their hidden wounds. You tell yourself you're strong enough to hold space for someone who feels broken. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, the weight grows heavier. No matter how much comfort you give, it's never enough. Their needs multiply, their crises overlap, and your own exhaustion starts to creep in like a shadow at the edge of the room. You find yourself drained, running on empty. The sympathy you once gave so freely now feels like a scarce resource. You begin to notice that the more you give, the more they seem to need. They hoard your kindness like it's the air they breathe, collecting every gesture, every late-night pep talk, every sacrifice you make for their sake. There's never any space for your own feelings, your own struggles. When you try to share a moment of pain or ask for help, the conversation shifts back to them, their issues, their emotional hunger. You shrink your needs, silence your discomfort, and convince yourself that you can keep going, that your job is to be the strong one. This is the Sympathy Hoard in action. They build a fortress out of your empathy, brick by brick, until you're locked outside your own heart. Your identity becomes caretaker, rescuer, therapist, forever on call. The irony is that the more you give, the less you have left for yourself. You stop tending to your own wounds, telling yourself they're not as bad, not as urgent. But compassion fatigue is real, and the cost of ignoring your limits is always higher than you expect. One day you reach your breaking point. Maybe it's a night when you can't pick up the phone, or a text you don't answer right away. Maybe you try to draw a boundary, ask for some space, some understanding, some room to breathe. That's when the shaming starts. They can't believe you'd abandon them now, when they need you most. They list the times you were there for them, the history of your support, turning your own kindness into a weapon of guilt. Suddenly, you're not just tired, you're ashamed for even thinking of putting yourself first. It's a clever manipulation, cloaked in the language of vulnerability. They remind you how important you are, how much they depend on you, how lost they'd be if you stopped caring. The subtext is always the same. Your needs come second, your limits are selfish, your exhaustion is a betrayal. The more you protest, the more they double down, weaving stories of abandonment and loneliness, making you the villain for daring to say enough. This dynamic can play out anywhere: families, friendships, romantic relationships, even at work. The coworker who always needs saving from their own mistakes. The relative who dominates every holiday with tales of hardship. The friend who turns every group hangout into a therapy session for their latest crisis. Over time, you learn to suppress your instincts, to ration your kindness, afraid that setting a boundary will mean losing the relationship altogether. But real compassion is not a bottomless well. It requires balance, mutual care, the ability to give and receive without depletion. The sympathy hoard feeds on your inability to say no, on your guilt for needing anything yourself. It teaches you to ignore your own suffering, to view self-care as selfishness. You end up feeling hollow, resentful, and alone, even when surrounded by the people you've helped most. The only way out is to reclaim your right to care for yourself. To recognize that your empathy is valuable, but not infinite. You have permission to draw lines, to step back, to say, I can't do this right now. Healthy relationships don't just take, they give back. They notice when you are tired. They offer comfort when you need it too. Anyone who shames you for setting limits is not honoring your humanity. They're exploiting it. You are allowed to be whole, to rest, to hold some of your sympathy for yourself. Compassion is not a currency to be spent until you're bankrupt. You deserve to feel supported, to be listened to be loved without conditions or guilt. The next time someone tries to shame you for taking care of yourself, remember this. Your empathy is a gift, not a debt. It's okay to keep some of that kindness for yourself. You are worthy of it too. The teacher's illusion. You meet someone who radiates confidence, wisdom, and a gentle promise of guidance. They always have the right words, quotes, lessons, little parables that make you pause and question yourself. Early on, it feels like a gift. Finally, someone older or more experienced who cares enough to show you the way. You open yourself to their advice, let them shape your decisions, and, at first, it feels empowering, like you're unlocking a new version of yourself. But slowly a shadow grows beneath their encouragement. Their guidance begins to feel like a leash. Their approval becomes essential, their disappointment devastating. You realize you're shrinking, not growing, under their influence. You're caught in the teacher's illusion, where the mentor's wisdom isn't meant to liberate you, but to quietly cement your dependence and keep you in your place. It starts innocently enough. The teacher might notice your struggles, your questions, your hunger to learn, and step forward to help. They position themselves as a sage, someone who's been through it all and can help you avoid their mistakes. You trust their advice, you listen closely, and you find yourself genuinely grateful. For a while, their mentorship feels like sunlight and you're drawn to their certainty. But soon, their guidance grows invasive. They question your instincts. When you try to make your own choices, they gently warn you away. That's not wise, they say. Or, I've seen that go badly before, trust me. You start to feel guilty for wanting independence. You check yourself before every decision. What would they say? And second guess your own desires. Their approval is your compass. Their stories become your script. Whenever you try to step out on your own, they withhold their praise. Or worse, offer disappointed silence. They may even frame your small rebellions as betrayals. I thought you trusted my experience, but if you want to learn the hard way, I can't stop you. You find yourself apologizing for having your own ideas, promising to do better, seeking reassurance after every misstep. The wisdom that was supposed to lift you up now pushes you down, turning you into a perpetual student, never quite ready to graduate, never quite worthy of equal footing. What's happening isn't mentorship. It's a subtle, often unconscious form of control. In healthy teaching, the goal is to help you become independent, to surpass the teacher, to find your own voice. But in the teacher's illusion, the mentor's wisdom always keeps you just a little unsure, a little off balance. You're taught to believe your own judgment is flawed, that you're not quite ready, that without them, you'll falter. They're the gatekeeper to insight, and every lesson is a tether. Consider the manager at work who always trains you, but never lets you take the lead. Every time you try to show initiative, they correct you, then claim credit for your progress. I taught them everything they know. Or the parent who frames every family story as a lesson in obedience, not freedom. You'd be lost without my guidance. Or the partner who positions themselves as your emotional coach, turning every argument into a lecture, every disagreement into a test of your loyalty. Even friends can fall into this dynamic, especially if they are threatened by your growth. Instead of celebrating your risks and victories, they caution you, undermine you, or compete to be the wisest voice in the room. The illusion deepens when you internalize their authority, believing you'll never be ready to stand alone. Your sense of self erodes, replaced by a hunger for approval and a terror of disappointing the teacher. This pattern can last for years, even a lifetime. You might move from one mentor to another, always seeking guidance, always doubting your own wisdom. You may find that your real dreams have been put on pause, waiting for permission that never comes. The teacher's illusion robs you of your agency by wrapping control in the velvet of care. But there's a way out. True mentorship empowers, not imprisons. A real teacher celebrates when you challenge them, when you take risks, when you outgrow their lessons. They encourage you to trust your instincts, make mistakes, and carve your own path. They want you to walk alone, not follow behind. To break the teacher's illusion, Start by listening to the quiet discomfort inside, the feeling that your life is waiting on someone else's approval. Ask yourself, is this advice helping me grow or keeping me small? Do I fear losing their support if I choose differently? Am I shrinking to fit their story or stepping into my own? The freedom you seek is on the other side of this illusion. You are more than a student. Your wisdom is not a privilege to be granted, but a birthright to be claimed. Step out from under the shadow of borrowed authority. Thank your teachers for what they offered, then walk forward, confident, uncertain, fully yourself. The world needs your mistakes as much as your victories, your voice as much as your questions. No more waiting for permission. No more shrinking to fit. The lesson is over. Now, it's your turn to teach yourself. The Eclipse Apology. There's an apology that doesn't heal, it eclipses. It begins with words you've been longing to hear. I'm sorry. But as soon as the conversation starts, something changes. Their voice trembles, their eyes fill with tears, and suddenly the focus shifts. Not to your pain, but to theirs. They tell you how devastated they are that you could ever think so badly of them. How much your disappointment hurts them, how their intentions were pure all along. Their regret expands until it fills the room, casting your own feelings into shadow. This is the Eclipse Apology, an emotional maneuver so overwhelming it makes you question your own right to be hurt. At first, you might feel relief. Finally, an acknowledgement of the pain you experienced. Maybe you even start to relax, thinking this will be the moment you're seen, understood, validated. But soon the apology bends, tilting away from your experience and toward theirs. I can't believe you think I would ever do that to you, they say, or it hurts me so much to know I made you feel this way. Their remorse is dramatic, urgent, loud. The more you try to share your perspective, the more their pain grows, until it eclipses yours entirely. You try to explain, to gently hold on to the reality of your own feelings. It just hurt when you said that but every attempt is met with more emotion from them. I just feel so misunderstood, they insist. I never meant to hurt you. I wish you could see my heart. You find yourself stepping back from your own pain, minimizing your experience, even comforting them for the agony they're expressing about your hurt. Slowly, subtly, the script is flipped. You become the caretaker, the apologizer, the one who must now reassure and repair. This is the power of the Eclipse Apology. It doesn't deny your feelings, it just overshadows them so thoroughly you feel ashamed for ever expressing them. You begin to doubt your own perception. Did you overreact? Were you too sensitive? Maybe you misunderstood their intentions. You find yourself apologizing for bringing up your hurt at all, or for making things worse by insisting on your own needs. This dynamic can play out anywhere. In romantic relationships, where one partner's tears and heartbreak always take center stage. In friendships, where a simple expression of hurt is met with wounded protest and a desperate plea for forgiveness. In families, where a parent's apology becomes a soliloquy on how hard they try, how much they love you, how it breaks their heart to think they failed. Even at work, a boss might say, "I'm sorry you felt that way, but you have no idea how much pressure I'm under," turning an apology into a justification for their own behavior. Why does the Eclipse Apology work? Because empathy is wired into us. We are drawn to the pain of others, especially those we care about. When someone's regret is so consuming, it feels cold and selfish to insist on our own suffering. We recoil from the idea of being the bad guy, so we abandon our own experience to rescue them from their distress. It's emotional jujitsu. Your pain is redirected, reframed, swallowed by the sheer force of their remorse. Over time, this pattern can leave deep scars. You may become reluctant to share your feelings, knowing the cost will be high, that any attempt at honesty will end with you comforting them rather than being comforted. You might stop trusting your own perspective, second-guessing your instincts, holding your breath rather than risk another emotional eclipse. You may even become isolated from your own emotions, fearing that any attempt to address hurt will unleash a tidal wave of guilt and confusion. But the truth is, a real apology is simple. It centers the person who was hurt. It acknowledges, it listens, it takes responsibility. It doesn't demand reassurance or emotional caretaking in return. A true apology creates space for your pain and, with humility, commits to doing better. The Eclipse Apology, on the other hand, is a storm that demands attention, demanding so much sympathy that there is no room left for you. If you find yourself in the orbit of an eclipse apology, pause. Remember that your feelings are valid, no matter how much regret or distress someone else displays. It's not selfish to want your pain to be heard. It's not cruel to ask for change without being drawn into someone else's emotional gravity. Healthy relationships make room for two truths: that someone can feel regret, and you can still be hurt. That both people's feelings matter, but not at the expense of one being endlessly eclipsed by the other. You do not have to apologize for being hurt. You do not have to abandon your reality to make room for someone else's performance of pain. The next time an apology begins to eclipse your own experience, let yourself step back into the light. Hold fast to what you feel. You deserve to be heard, to be seen, to be understood, not just in the brief glow of someone else's regret, but in the full brightness of your own truth. The echo chamber. There's a special kind of loneliness that settles in when the loudest voice in your head isn't even your own anymore. It begins so quietly. Maybe you don't even notice at first. Someone close to you, someone you trust, listens to your insecurities, your secret worries, the doubts you only admit in the safety of night. At first, their attention feels like comfort, like understanding. But over time, something changes. Instead of soothing your fears, they begin to echo them back, but louder, sharper, dressed in the authority of their voice. What you once whispered to yourself now returns as thunder from someone else's mouth. This is the echo chamber, not the kind built of algorithms and news feeds, but a deeply personal one, crafted by someone who makes your doubts their instrument. It starts with vulnerability. Maybe you confess, "I'm not sure I'm good enough for this job," or "I always mess things up." They don't disagree. Instead, they reflect those words back to you, sometimes even exaggerating them. "You've always struggled with that, haven't you?" Or, "Yeah, you do tend to make a mess of things sometimes." What felt like a moment of closeness now becomes evidence. Evidence that your darkest suspicions about yourself are true, because someone else sees it too. At first, you try to brush it off. Maybe they're just being honest. Maybe you do need to work harder, try more, be better. But their voice sticks in your head, replaying at the worst moments. When you hesitate to take a risk, when you stumble, when you're alone. Gradually, you realize your internal dialogue has changed. Your doubts don't sound like you anymore. They sound like them. The echo chamber is a subtle, devastating manipulation. The person doing it may not even seem cruel on the surface. They can be soft-spoken, calm, even loving in their own way. They don't have to shout. They simply repeat what you fear about yourself, over and over, until it settles into your bones. Your self-esteem is no longer built from your own experience, but from their narration of your failures. It can happen anywhere. A parent who just wants you to be realistic, always reminding you of past disappointments. A partner who masks their control as concern, echoing your insecurities until you shrink inside yourself. A friend whose brutal honesty always aligns with your worst self-judgments. The echoing becomes a constant refrain. You're not enough. You always do this. Maybe you should accept your limits. And soon, your own ambitions, hopes, and strengths feel muffled, overwritten by their version of you. Why is this so powerful? Because we all have doubts. We all crave validation. Not just of our strengths, but even of our fears. When someone else confirms our insecurities, it feels like proof. If they see it, it must be real. We hand them the microphone to our inner critic, and they never give it back. The result? Paralysis. You stop reaching for new things, stop believing you could ever be different. The echo becomes so loud that you can't hear the smaller voice, the one that's kinder, more forgiving, more ambitious. Your life contracts, shrinking to fit the version of yourself the echo chamber has created. But the harm isn't just internal. Over time, you begin to anticipate their criticism, adjust your behavior to avoid their disapproval, and even start to distance yourself from people who don't share their negative view of you. Your world narrows, the walls of the chamber closing in, until their voice is the only one you trust, especially when it comes to judging yourself. How do you break free? First, recognize the echo. Listen closely to your doubts. Whose voice do they really sound like? Then, consciously seek out other voices, friends who celebrate your strengths, mentors who see your potential, your own past self from moments of courage and joy. Challenge the echo by naming it out loud. That's not my voice. That's someone else's fear. Begin to narrate your story in your own words again, even if they start out soft and shaky. It takes time to drown out the echo, to remember what your own self-belief sounds like. But you can. You can choose which voices you let live rent-free in your mind. You can replace the inner critic with an inner ally, one who acknowledges your doubts, but also your dreams, your setbacks, and your victories. The echo chamber is real, and it's devastating. But the silence that follows its collapse is full of possibility. Fill that silence with your own voice, louder every day, until the only echo you hear is the sound of your own hope returning home at last. The target shift. There is a special kind of manipulation that's so subtle, so familiar, that many people mistake it for empathy or even love. It's called the target shift. At first, it feels like caring, like you're in a relationship with someone who's open, sensitive, and deeply in touch with their own emotions. But gradually, as you try to bring your own needs to the surface, you find the ground slipping out from under you. You start a conversation hoping to be heard, only to realize, somehow mysteriously, the entire focus has shifted. Your needs disappear, their pain takes center stage, and the cycle repeats over and over until you begin to question whether your own feelings matter at all. Imagine sitting down with a partner or friend after a hard day. You begin to open up. I've been feeling overwhelmed at work lately. I just need some support, maybe a bit more help around the house. The words barely leave your mouth before the target shift begins. Their face changes, hurt, defensive, maybe even angry. You think you have it hard, they say. I've been dealing with so much stress myself, but I never complain. You know how hard things have been for me since I lost that contract last year? Suddenly, you're not talking about your feelings anymore. You're talking about theirs. Or maybe you try to set a boundary. It really upsets me when you joke about my family in front of other people. Instantly, the subject changes. Wow, I guess I'm just a terrible person then, they respond, voice trembling. I can't do anything right. I was only trying to make everyone laugh, but I guess I'm just always the villain in your eyes. The room grows heavy. You abandon your concern and rush to comfort them. Your hurt is erased, replaced by guilt for making them feel bad. The target shift thrives in relationships where emotional boundaries are already weak, where you've been conditioned to prioritize others, to smooth over conflict, to avoid making waves. The person who deploys this tactic often does so unconsciously. It's their defense mechanism, their way of escaping accountability. But that doesn't make it any less damaging. Over time, you learn that sharing your needs means triggering a crisis, unleashing a storm of their pain, anger, or tears. So you stop. You silence yourself. You become the caretaker of their emotions, the guardian of their stability, never realizing that your own needs are fading away. This isn't just about a few bad conversations. It's about the slow reprogramming of your inner life. You find yourself rehearsing their feelings before you speak, anticipating how they'll react, censoring yourself before you even try. You stop asking for help, for understanding, for kindness. You shrink your needs to fit the space they leave you, always putting their pain above your own. The result is a lopsided relationship, one in which you are cast as the permanent caretaker, the emotional first responder, while your own wounds go unattended. Let's look at another example, a parent and child. The child tries to express, "Mom, I feel sad when you cancel our plans." The mother sighs, her voice trembling. "You know how much pressure I'm under? If only you understood what it's like to be a single parent. I give you everything, but it's never enough." The child's sadness turns to guilt. They swallow their disappointment, learning that love means not burdening others with their feelings. Or, in the workplace, an employee brings up being overworked to a manager. "I hear you," the manager replies. "But do you realize how hard it's been for me to keep this team afloat? I've been working weekends, barely seeing my own family. If you think you're tired, imagine how I feel." The conversation ends. The employee goes back to work, their exhaustion unaddressed, their needs left behind. The target shift is so effective because it masquerades as vulnerability. The manipulator's pain is real, or at least convincingly performed. You want to comfort them, to show compassion. But in reality, you're being diverted. Your needs have become the new target for deflection. The person who should be listening is now center stage, and you are back in the audience, applauding their struggle. Over time, this manipulation erodes your sense of self-worth. You begin to believe that your feelings are less important, that your pain is selfish or burdensome, You may even feel guilty for having needs at all. You shrink. You silence yourself. You become the expert in reading their moods and tiptoeing around their fragility. But the target shift does not have to define your life. The first step is noticing when it happens. When you share a feeling or set a boundary and the conversation instantly becomes about the other person's suffering, pause. Ask yourself, is my need being heard, or am I being asked to abandon myself again? Healthy relationships can handle two people's pain at once. They don't demand that you erase yourself for the sake of peace. It can feel terrifying to reclaim your needs after years of being trained to set them aside. But you have a right to be heard, to take up space, to have your pain honored alongside anyone else's. Your needs are not a threat. Your boundaries are not cruelty. The target shift only works when you believe that you owe the other person your silence. You don't. Your feelings matter. Your voice matters. The more you hold your ground, the less power this manipulation will have over you. Remember, empathy flows both ways. Real love is not a competition for who hurts more, but a partnership in which both people can speak, can be heard, and can heal. The next time the target shifts, notice it. Breathe. Bring the conversation gently but firmly back to your needs. You are allowed to matter too.